at USA Ultimate. I played at UGA for 4 years, and then I've played on Ozone for 10 years. So I'm so glad to be back. This community means so much to me, so I'm really excited for tonight. Right now I'm going to introduce Henry Thorne, who is on our board of directors and has been for a very long time. It's not nice. And he's going to facilitate us tonight. So again, thank you all for coming, and I'm really looking forward to this evening.
Thank you, Julia. So we are, let me introduce myself. I'm married an ultimate player. My name is Henry Thorne. I had 2 ultimate playing children who used to throw with Stu Downs when they were 2 years old and 4 and 5 years old. That's how old he is. And became great players and played against Elliott. So, and had great rivalries actually. But we mainly loved Atlanta because we came down here for the Paideia Cup twice, North Hills, and stayed with the Lassiters, and Helen is here. God bless, thank you. Because we really put up in a motor coach, and the entire team got out, which was, I guess there's only 20 of us. It felt like a ton in your house, and so thank you for that. You made chili on Sunday after this incredibly rainy miserable day. So anyway, I am a ultimate believer. I think ultimate makes the world a better place. I think it is pure happiness and fun, and I think the way we play develops our communities in wonderful ways, and our children and ourselves in wonderful ways. So I work on it because I think it's better. I think the world is better with more of it. We are the national governing body of the sport. We're the government, which is the most boring thing in the world. But we go out and make plans every 3 to 5 years. And when we do that, we do it in a way different than the other national governing bodies. The other national governing bodies get the smartest people in the room, figure it out, and come out and tell you this great plan and sell it to you. What we learned on the field in Ultimate is we don't have the best perspective necessarily. So we come out to you and try and get your perspective. We figured out what we think the toughest issues are, the 13 biggest issues facing us that we're going to need to plan around and figure out what to do about. And we took the top 6 of those, and we're ready to talk about those 6 things with you all tonight. The way it's going to work is we're going to have breakout groups where we do that. And then we're going to come together as a whole group and go through the whole kit and caboodle. And you can see everything going on in Ultimate from our shared perspective and try and figure out what you're seeing and what the theme is and what's going on and help us see into that theme. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to start with a 5-minute video on how we got here, which is the last 50 years, which is kind of a fringe where only students directed national sport. We will see plenty of people that we all know on these old teams. And these are the people that got us to where we are. We're going to just take a look at them for a moment. He actually does that. So, finishing the history, just to frame it up. 5 years ago, we were looking for a new CEO of our organization, USA Ultimate, or at that time the UPA, and had a resume on our desk of a guy from the world of sports. And we had to make a decision of do we want to kind of join the rest of the world of sports or live on in our happy place with Ultimate, which we loved and didn't think needed the rest of the world of sports. But we thought we could probably learn something. We also thought we could get our sport into the world of sports and maybe influence them and maybe have some of the good stuff we do rub off on the rest of the world of sports. So we got lucky, and this guy happened to also fall in love with our sport and have the same like-minded attitude that sports can make a great difference in the world and people's lives and be a wonderful, positive thing. And he actually had to take a giant pay cut to work with us, but thought our sport was great enough to go ahead and do that. And so Tom Crawford worked with the USOC and developed the coaching code of ethics for the USOC. He also is a PhD in high-performance athletics and studied all the training centers around the world and brought that knowledge of their training back to the USOC and did a whole lot of work also with the NFL, the NBA, and the NHL, and so has a great understanding of the world of sports that we just didn't have on our little board on USA. So we did hire him, and he is here today to describe to us something about that whole world of sports that we're now connected to and a part of. And with no further Dr. Tom Crawford.
I just want to echo my sincere thanks for you taking the time to come out tonight. Know that everybody has busy lives and there's a lot of things that you could be doing, so we really, really appreciate you coming out. and all the great work that you do here in Atlanta. One of the real hotbeds and fun places to watch Ultimate happen. So thank you very much for all that awesome stuff that you do. I'm going to try to just provide a little bit of context for the discussions that you're going to have tonight, kind of show you where we are in the world of sports that could maybe inform some of the discussions you have about what we do for the next 3 years and the next 50 years. But if Henry doesn't mind, I'd like to just take a second to also describe why I'm doing this a little bit more than Henry described. And it's because I actually really believe that sports, when done right, can enhance human existence in incredibly powerful ways. And the reason that I think that is because I've had this really lucky career where I have seen all sides of sport. I've seen the good, the bad, and the ugly. And there's a lot of good. There's a lot of good. There's also a lot of bad. There's also a lot of ugly. And I discovered Ultimate due to a niece who taught me. We used to see discs flying around at our family events all the time. We were always teasing about it. But we would also throw them around and have fun. So I went and checked it out. I went to one event for a weekend. And given all of that experience that I have had doing all that stuff, I didn't know anything about it. I knew nothing about it. I was blown away in one weekend. And literally fell in love with the sport, the way Henry described. I mean, it was like unbelievable athletes, speed, quickness, agility, power, endurance, cognitive acuity on every play, game after game after game. And fierce competition, intense competition, people really going at it. But with this amazing spirit that I, after all those years of experience doing all those other things, I could feel it. I could feel that spirit in a way I had never felt before. And so I had all these years of experience. I believed in sport. I had seen sport transform individuals' lives, families' lives, communities. So I was like, wow, power of sport I already believe in. Here's a sport I knew nothing about. What incredible potential. That's why I'm doing this, because I really believe that we, all of us in all of these cities we're going to, have an amazing opportunity to make a huge difference in the lives of hundreds of thousands, millions of people. And we're just getting started in so many ways. We've got this amazing 50-year history that is really cool that we have to honor and celebrate. And by the way, come out next year, put it on your calendar, everybody. Next year at the National Championships, we are going to have a huge 50th anniversary celebration, party, etc. And we want everybody to come to that. It's in San Diego, great destination. We are going to celebrate and honor the amazing history and culture of this sport. And then we're going to present the plan that comes out of all of this work at that and get going on the next 50 years. So please put that on your calendar. Okay, let me just take you through a few things to give you some context here. First, always important to remember the mission. Our mission is to advance the sport of Ultimate in the United States through the 3 C's that I know you're all familiar with. Our vision currently is important to understand. It's that Ultimate is widely known, played, and respected in the United States as a sport that inspires athletic excellence both in its participants and its fans. Now, this could change, right? This is a vision tour. We're going to get a bunch of input. This vision could change for the next 3 to 5 years, but this is the vision right now. This is now the structure that we live in. And I'm going to explain this really briefly. At the very top of sports in the world is the International Olympic Committee. They are responsible for trying to grow sport in a healthy way, every continent, all over the world. Big, huge organization, and they have members, and here are the members. The members first are the international federations. Ours is WIFDF. WIFDF functions just like all of those other international federations that you see up there. They're part of the International Olympic Committee, and the president and executive director of WIFDF interact with the IOC now constantly, now that they are permanent members of the IOC. The other members are the Olympic Committee. For us, that's the United States Olympic Committee, and you can see all of the other Olympic committees that function in countries around the world. So that, they make up the International Olympic Committee, right? This is what I wanted you to see about the U.S. Olympic Committee and the power of us being now part of this and being part of the Olympic family. What a lot of people don't realize is in the United States, the U.S. Olympic Committee doesn't just put together Olympic teams and send them to Pyeongchang, which is the next Winter Olympic Games. They actually function in the United States as our Ministry of Sport through an act of Congress back in the 70s. So all of these groups, along with us, are members of the United States Olympic Committee. So when we go to the Olympic Congress, these are all of the groups that we're interacting with that, as Henry described earlier, what's happening, and it is really cool watching this happen and being part of it, is like me, they're discovering Ultimate. And when they discover it, they're having the same reaction that I have. They're like, this is a really interesting, fun, cool sport that we want to know more about. So you can take a look at all of those groups. The one I'll point out right now that I'm really excited about is the week after we finish the tour, we go to Dallas, and we're presenting at the Police Athletic League, which is one of the members you'll see up there, the PAL National Conference. How many of you are familiar with the Police Athletic Leagues? Anybody? Not a very well-known organization that does really cool work. So here's what they do. They're police officers that go out into challenged, tough communities where they're trying to develop relationships, particularly with young people and their families, for a variety of reasons. Keep the kids out of trouble. Have a more positive relationship with the community so that there are better relations between those families and the police officers. Teach life lessons to the kids through sport. We are now at that convention 2 weeks from now, the featured sport, because they discovered Ultimate at the last Olympic Congress, and they said, wow, built-in conflict resolution, have we been looking for this? Really inexpensive, we can get some discs and play it in the middle of the street in one of these cities if we need to. Really like that. Really fun, kids are going to have a blast and want to keep playing. Really love that. Spirit of the game, what an ethos. We get kids running around having a blast, learning a new sport, and we get to teach all of those things at the same time. And police officers developing relationships in the very communities they want to develop relationships in. That's the power of being in the Olympic Committee. If we get on the Olympic program, great. And if anybody's interested in learning where we are with that and more about this, please come to the breakout that I'm going to do. We can talk about it in a lot of detail. But that's the power of being in the Olympic Committee. Then you have us, and we are the NGB, so we are under both WIFDF and the U.S. Olympic Committee. We're members of WIFDF, and we're members of the U.S. Olympic Committee, and that's true for all of these other organizations as well. And again, this is just to give you a picture of where we're at and where we fit. But this, I think, is really interesting. You can see our upside potential here. So right now, we're at about 55,000 members, growing at about 4.5% to 5% a year. You can see how other sports are doing. And we used to be just like this with rugby, by the way. We were always side by side in terms of our size and our growth. And they got on the Olympic program, and they're blowing it up right now. So you can see the upside potential that we have if we can build out the structure that we're building out and get hundreds and hundreds of thousands of kids playing the sport. And this is who we are. This is who USA Ultimate is. It's athletes, it's coaches, it's most important of all, and thank you to all of you, it's volunteers. We get nothing done without literally the thousands of volunteers around the United States that do an amazing amount of work to grow the sport of Ultimate. So again, thank you, because I know many of you sitting in this room are those volunteers, and we really, really appreciate it. The group that we need to grow like crazy is that second one on the left, on the top. So some of you have to stop playing this really silly sport. knock that off and start coaching this beautiful sport so we can get hundreds of thousands of kids playing. Because if we have an impediment right now, it's lack of structure, infrastructure, and lack of coaches to coach kids in real programs. That's probably what's slowing us down. Ultimate Foundation, this is a new organization, a new 501c3 that is going to raise money outside of our operating budget to fund a lot of these programs, like GUM, Play It Forward. We have scholarship programs now for kids that can't afford it. Our goal is that there's not a single kid in the United States that wants to play Ultimate that can't play because of an economic challenge. We want to overcome that so every kid can play from every different community, particularly as we form relationships with PAL, Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, Jewish community centers, Catholic youth organizations, all of whom are members of the Olympic Committee, all of whom are discovering our sport, and all of whom have really diverse communities that they work in that can start feeding kids into the structure that we build. Henry, should I stop? No? Okay, so this is what we're doing. We're building state organizations around the country. These are the ones we've established so far. We've got about 3 more coming soon. And these organizations, we provide a lot of funding, a lot of money, a lot of support. We build revenue sharing programs with them. And we're going to grow this all over the United States so that there are state organizations and affiliates all around the country that are delivering all of those programs which we've created and their own programs in their own way all over the United States. So our goal is to go from a lot of activity going on in Colorado Springs to pushing it all down to the local level and supporting as much local entrepreneurial ultimate activity as we can, because what we are definitely recognizing on this tour, we recognized when we built this, it looks really different in Atlanta than it does in San Francisco. And it looks really different in San Francisco than it does in Florida. And it looks different in California than it does in Florida. So we're going to help create these organizations, but then we're going to say, you figure it out, because we don't know. There's no way for us to know in Colorado Springs the best way to do it in Atlanta and Georgia. But you'll be able to figure that out, and we just want to help you do that in the best possible way. So that's the structure that we're building. And then at that local level, you've got all of the teams that are part of that community, that are part of that organization, and you've got all kinds of programs that we create and you create that can happen at that local level. And we've got groups like the groups sitting in this room that create youth leagues and youth programs and competitions at that local level. And then what we really want is those affiliates and state organizations to host events and run super high quality events where our certified tournament directors and all of the certified coaches, etc., are running really high quality programs at that local level. That's the structure that we're building. We are thrilled to have you be part of it. And if you want to learn a lot more about this, like I said, please come to the breakout. I took too long.
So if it's intimidating to think of us growing and being like USA Rugby or something, I think what you might be feeling is, do we really want to be mainstream? And I don't think we do. Doesn't mean we don't want to grow and be a part of the sporting world, but be the ultimate version of that, which is what we are. And the thing we're finding is that the rest of that world actually likes what we are. They actually appreciate the values we're bringing to it and what our culture is about, and that we're progressive even, is turning out to not be a problem. It used to be that there was culture or growth, you had to pick one. It's like we're doing both, and it's not a problem. And the Olympics is special, actually, that they like their values. They actually, and if you want to hear more about this, you should go to Tom's breakout group. They actually think we stand for what they're about better than they. And it's really encouraging to hear that. And the people that go into sports for a profession, they do it because they believe sports are good for people. And they hear about us and they have the same reaction. This is actually, we kind of do it right. So don't be too intimidated by the thought of growing. I think it can all work and be great, actually. So you have a choice tonight. We have two different ways we can run the rest of this, and I'm going to describe them to you, and then I'm going to ask for a vote. We have a problem that we're kicked out of here at 9 tonight, so short on time means we should probably go to the structure where we just do 6 breakout groups now, covering the 6 big issues, where we're going to hear from you what you think about these. You get a half an hour plus another 15 minutes to write it up, and then we can get these in front of everybody. And I think we have just the right amount of time for that. But we could squeeze it a bit and fit in a whole room-wide session on gender equity first. And we would break up to do that, but then we put all that in front of everybody too. The benefit of doing that is that you don't lose the gender equity folks into the gender equity group and not have them in the other 5. And we had a problem with that where the other 5 were lacking that. And so those are the choices. We can do.
Sorry,
yes.
Since gender equity was the first half, what's the second half?
Then we'd go to the other 5 breakout groups after that. So the other 5 breakout groups are, and actually we did put it down on the floor tonight. Branding, which is what are the challenges to the USA Ultimate brand and how can we address them? Fundamentally, it's what does USA Ultimate stand for? What do we want USA Ultimate to be? Semi-pro Ultimate. We have this policy of how we're handling semi-pro, which is basically, we're going to pretend you don't exist. We need to know what you think of that policy and whether we ought to change it. The youth structure, youth is giant because that's our future. So what are the best investment opportunities in the Youth Ultimate to ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood? So that's a group. And then there is Tom's group, which is the Olympic future, which is, there is this thing we're engaged with now that has all these positive impacts. There are some sacrifices we have to make. There are some trade-offs. We want to know your opinion on those. So those are the other 4 groups. The diversity and gender equity group is addressing the following 3 questions. How do we foster and support diversity and equity at the local level and at the national level? How do we educate ourselves and our communities to be allies? What are some tangible ways we can honor our commitment to gender equity? So we could, now I'm going to give you your 2 options again, break out into 3 gender equity groups right now and address each of those 3 questions, then pull back together and look at all those issues together as a group, and then go into these other 4 groups. Or we can treat the gender equity as one of the groups. There would be 5 groups, one of which would be gender equity. So I want a show of hands on which way you want to go. Gender equity as a separate breakout with everybody involved in it first. Raise your hands now.
Sorry, before we do that,
we got it down. What? Yeah.
Before we do that, is there going to be an opportunity to talk about something that's not one of these 6 pigeon names?
Yes, but you'll have to stay afterwards and talk. Okay. So back to the, which is okay. It's not cold out. Back to the vote here. So do you want to have a gender equity whole group session where we break out and get together on that issue first? Hands up. That's going to win. We don't have to do the second vote. So that's what we're going to do. Okay. With that, what we have are, we want to do 4 groups here, because I think there's just about the right amount of people in 4 groups. So Stacy's going to lead one, Julia's going to lead one, and I'm going to look for 2 volunteers in the crowd. It is not hard, but it'd be good if it was your issue so you were facile and skilled with it. And I'm looking for just 2 volunteers to lead the discussion around these questions. And if we don't get any, then you're stuck with somewhat dumb white males leading. That's good. That would be, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. I'll do it with you, Ben. Okay, thank you, Matt. Do we have anybody else? You don't want dumb white males. All right. So, Andy and Tom, can you go with Sean? Now, here are, Sean, you get to pick
Go around and do everyone's
talking about one question?
Yeah, I'm going to read the questions again and we can decide which one we want to focus on. How do we foster and support diversity and equity at the local level and then at the national level? How do we educate ourselves and our communities to be allies? And what are some tangible ways that we can honor our commitment to gender equity?
And it could create I like the idea of figuring out how we can make our communities be allies.
Allies? Yep, so how do we educate ourselves and our communities to be allies?
That's just my opinion.
What are we deciding right now?
The question that we're going to
So we can only answer one, or which
we're going to focus on one. Allies.
I kind of like tangible ways to make sure that it's they're all good questions.
Yeah, I'm sure they're all going to like.
Real tangible ways.
Can you repeat the first question?
How do we foster and support diversity and equity at the local level, at the national level?
Back at LC, head coach. So we got 1-1 right now. We have another one for tangible.
Another one for tangible. All right.
Everybody has tangible ideas.
True.
We don't have any tangible ideas.
Well, let's start with tangible ways, and then we can work our way to being allies. So what are some tangible ways that we can honor our commitment to gender equity?
I founded my undergrad ultimate team environment. I founded the Siege of Living part of it.
What was that?
Like I know women only represent 30% of the USA Ultimate. How are we going to spend that money? Do we spend it based on membership, or do we say we're going to devote a little more to minority and women stuff? Like what's the USA Ultimate? I guess I shouldn't be asking you.
I'm going to be really quiet. I'm here to listen, so I'm not going to.
But my feeling is we need to go above and beyond. You know, to me it's kind of like a affirmative action that you have to gotta make up to level the playing field. So
Equity demands that we give more
Diversity and equity.
what you read was the membership goals, fewer for women and more for men. Equity would demand that we give more to the ones who are most.
What about minorities?
I'm going to.
Yeah, what are the numbers? Do we know numbers of minorities in USA?
I think we can also be anecdotally from our personal experiences.
Yeah, not very many. Yeah. So then what do we do? What are ways, like I understand that like a large focus right now is obviously like increasing the awareness and the priority for women in the sport. But I think in the same right, if we're going to be devoting a lot of resources to that, you might as well just say, okay, how about all underrepresented groups in our community? Because right now it's predominantly white men. So how do we say, okay, let's get not only more women in the sport, but let's get more minority males in the sport as well, because it's an easy way to grow the sport as well.
I think it's easy to identify like the gender equity split because there's different like competition divisions that make it easy to say, okay, well we can funnel more into recruiting for this division or this competition level versus when you look at other elements of diversity, whether that's socioeconomic or racial or ethnic diversity, like those divisions aren't as clear all the time, so it's tougher. You can't just say like, oh, we'll go and create a division for this group of people, or we'll recruit more people of that type of so I think that you have to find a way to create an environment that fosters more of those people coming to the sport that's welcoming to that. But yeah, what's the tangible?
Yeah, like the tangible way would be the utilization of the Ultimate Foundation, for example, and like pulling those funds to further grow the sport at the grassroots level. And then like through partnerships with organizations like PAL.
Right.
Like those would be the ways that we want to try and foster that growth. I think that's like a tangible way of doing it. Like not just for women, but for minorities in the sport as well.
I agree with that. I think there's a misconception that Ultimate is an inexpensive sport, and I would disagree with that, and I would say it's a very expensive sport.
Absolutely.
Because if you do it legitimately, you pay for fields, you're paying for equipment, you're paying for travel, and with children, you're dealing with parents who may not make enough to afford that. So if we use our foundation money or our local fundraising money to support teams and to support coaches, as coaches, we need to stipend coaches, teams and schools cannot do that to get access into schools. The diversity of schools with women and girls who want to play.
I agree that I think that like finding a way to reach those populations is really important because most of us probably got an ultimate through our friend groups or our college communities, which are going to give a different piece of that element to how people are recruited. So getting in at a basic like a school, and I agree that ultimate, especially at a competitive level, is not the lowest cost option, but I do think it doesn't put a lot of individual burden as like a barrier to entry. So for example, if you can have a stipend for a coach and acquire a place to play, you can have a large number of people come and play without having to go through groups and purchasing a lot of equipment like you would if you played hockey or you rode or whatnot. So if we can create opportunities through using that spending to acquire the basic necessities for ultimate, and then get people to come to that, through a program, getting field space and coaching to a one-off clinic. I think is maybe not the answer, but creating an environment like leagues. We talk like PAL is one of the things that got brought up in this conversation is a great opportunity for that sort of thing. But through schools and stuff like that, I think is a good opportunity to get people to play and take advantage of the low cost of entry for an individual.
I think like a major barrier, at least in the city, is field space.
Yeah.
Touch on that.
So the population's here.
Right, exactly. And that's the thing, like the population's here is an incredibly diverse city in and of itself. And so I think like we have a lot of the pieces there to, pull in and utilize those resources. It's just a matter of like finding something tangible. I think especially in the sense of field space where you can say, okay, we have a community space that we can look at that can be rotated through separate coaches, for example, that we can use to hold, not necessarily clinics, because I agree, I personally don't feel like clinics are the best way to reach out to individuals and make a true impact, just because they're very hit or miss. And sometimes you have people that can attend and can't attend. So I think if you have something that's consistent, ongoing, like the league, or in that aspect, then I think it's a lot easier to encourage people to come out and give them the opportunity to. Because like I got involved in the sport my senior year of high school, but my league, my team that started happened like early in the fall, and I didn't get into it until about early February. And that was only because my friends like repeatedly asked me to come out and play. If there wasn't like that ongoing opportunity, that ongoing temptation of like my friends being there and saying like, "Gabe, come on out, I might not have gotten into the sport the way I did.
So that's psychology, right? Like your biggest influencers from like 13 to 18 and switches from your parents to your massively influenced by your peer group. So I feel like a lot of these clinics, I've experienced the same thing. We do clinics, we used to do a whole lot of them, and it just didn't feel like we guys could work something wrong. It didn't feel like we had the impact we were expecting. We didn't get people back.
So I mean, it's something that having a whole other division is great.
But I know it's caused come out here.
Strife and small programs.
If I were to spend money in the first place, I would spend, I don't know if we've done this or not, is examining other sports that have made a push for diversity and for gender equity, and seeing what they did and where they spent money, and what worked and what didn't work. Because, quite frankly, no one wins free money. Because then they accepted as an expert in what works and what works and what doesn't, and what does work and what doesn't work. Very counterintuitive. So I would want to get more information. I think more study of other sports.
Well, I mean, as far as the divisions, like when you sign up this year, are you open or are you girls? Right. At least we don't have any co-ed teams.
It's something that's been proven.
Was that specifically rugby, swimming, lacrosse?
Where it's like, there was another girls team, but some of the really good girls.
I think volleyball.
Boys team.
Volleyball. They've all exactly the same issues.
It's even more competitive, which is great because
I think something like the cross is special.
The really good players in the girls team, the other girls are good players. And then those teams in the
volleyball is a great model because their biggest state is California. And right now, every time one boy joins, one junior boy joins in California, 10 girls join. 10-to-1 ratio.
That's the best ratio.
And the guys don't have to.
That's what's happening in California for volleyball right now.
I would just say I know that the entry to starting up like behind disc and finding fields isn't the hard part. We could all do that in a matter of a few hours, but the part that's hard is being out there on a consistent basis, and we need like part-time support for local people to be able to have the time, because like all of us
there are
go out 2 times a week at a certain time of day. Like usually it's 4 p.m. and most of us are still at work, and that's the biggest barrier or most likely time is if we're expecting the diverse groups that we're looking for to travel to practices, that's not going to do what we want to.
We've tried in the past where there's been like camps, like inner city camps that we've been working at, and we're like, can't get people to make it. It's like usually during the summer we can't get people to make it to them, so it's very inconsistent. And then you'll show up and the kids aren't like interested anymore because like, oh, you were here, but like it's a different person this time, and it just needs to be like a better way to like, I don't know, always be like a consistent presence if we're gonna try to, change something.
So the Atlanta like high school leagues, majority of teams that I know, and I'm not super plugged into high school, but like majority of teams that I know are usually in the more affluent parts of Atlanta, private schools in the suburbs. So like, have there been teams basically in like south or southwest Atlanta?
In 1995, a friend of ours moved from New York, worked for Teach for America in Dublin, Georgia, and he knows what that is. He formed a team, Spanish teacher, Dan Colgan. He formed a team from players there, and all but one of the players were African American. They played practice for the year that he taught there, and came to the tournament in Athens, and everyone was thrilled. Dan left his job after about a year and a quarter, and was gone. So these things can happen. It's absolutely going to take a ton of effort from people who want to happen, because it's going to lead to that person's consistency, availability, and reliability, because that's what those kids are going to look for.
And then sometimes there was
And I mean, I've been to schools where like it's majority African American. Like the kids want to play ultimate. Like they have seen it before. They at least know what a frisbee is, and they want to play it. So if we're there, we have a constant presence. Like we can form something. We just have to be there. Like know what to do.
Yeah. Because like unless we know someone or someone's plugged into that school, how are we going to do those school hours or those peak hours that you're talking about if we're already
the problem? Yeah. Because like during the summers, it's hard to get to the camps.
I think it helped.
We're working. We'll invite them to clinics, like the Hustle. We'll have them invite them to clinics, but like they can't get there. Right.
No, you really got to be at the school. The school has field space, and the kids are there. It's got to be after school. How much is like like trying to work with like the whole system, like PE teacher stuff? Because I know that they have like you can at least like I grew up in Huntsville, and we did some stuff before I left, and like trying to get in with like head PE teachers that like kind of oversee multiple schools and like getting ultimate in schools that way.
We're not from the great organizers that I work with, they have a hard time, like, if you're going to an athletic director to try and get ultimate schools, they're super overwhelmed with the sports that they have, and they're already having to prioritize the sports, like in terms of field space.
It seems like open is a blocker.
Just resources in general. So that's, you have to have a advantage of why ultimate should be prioritized over your sport.
Well, I think what I really mean is like how do we get the PE teachers to just like teach ultimate as a thing? Like, you know, they have a basketball unit, they have whatever units.
We have to have it in there.
Right. Is it too roundabout to try and attack those influencers and get them excited about ultimate? Not as like an element of their PE curriculum, but as people, like if we were to recruit teachers to play in league, like get people to, like maybe we're not reaching right now, and be like, oh man, Ultimate's really cool, I have fun as a player. Instead of trying to insert a player into the system, trying to go to someone in the system and convert them into a player who could then be that reliable presence for a team. Like, oh, now I'm a teacher who plays Ultimate, I want to know more about Ultimate so I can share it with kids, rather than let's find someone who's an Ultimate player and then have them who is also going to teach. Like, is that a possible, or is that too roundabout?
No, I would say that's definitely like one of the more tangible ways.
It's almost like if you're going to do an open league,
I do sales, and the easiest way to make sales involved on a large scale is to find the decision maker, and then it just trickles down from there. Because like once you get to the right person, or you get to the right people that are making the final, the ultimate decision, pun intended, right? Thank you. So once you get to those people, and they you convince them, you get them to see like the benefit and aspect of the sport, that's when it just happens. It gets spread out because they have the ability and the authority to dictate, to mandate in a sense. And I don't want to use mandate because it's like, but they have the ability to go ahead and spread the message in the sport a lot easier than trying to go individually to each place. Because like I've experienced it coaching like Druid Hills Middle School. I picked up for the year to try and coach there, and it was just too hard to get there physically, both in terms of time and then dealing with the space that the kids had and then being able to commit. And like Stu, that's a huge issue. Like those kids need that kind of stability. And if you can just get it at the overarching level, then it just kind of falls into place. So I think that's a tangible way to do it. I think we need to find who those decision makers are at the bigger level, and then get to them, communicate to them, show them the benefits of the sport, and then that helps it grow, at least in like the education system. Because that's a huge portion of the grassroots movement, is getting those kids there and then getting them come out to the leagues that we can establish. Once we see that demand and find a way to like properly capture that demand in each respective area.
You didn't mention athletic directors. I had this problem. I tried to my old high school in Florida. I just reached out to them and said, hey, I'm interested in coaching a club. And I could not get time of day from the athletic director or the vice principal. But my friends who were teachers, they already have the in, they can bypass that. So I think a tangible way would be like educating athletic directors or the person in charge, going after them, getting them to at least respect Ultimate. Not everyone has the respect of Ultimate, especially in cities not like Atlanta.
They think you play with dogs.
Exactly. Yeah. Atlanta has a pretty good following. People kind of know what it is, but other cities, nowhere near. Definitely.
Is the gender question entirely different?
Big strides to make this happen. I think it's somewhat different, because we don't have a similar approach. For example, where people find Ultimate, find their friends, and find other
Gender have people in other countries that do that, so that affects their Ultimate scene. Like that's what the Christian does.
I think it's a different kind of question.
I think there it's fostering the foundation that's already in place. Like Atlanta has a great community, like with AWU and obviously like Ozone and Outbreak. Gender equity. So I think it's just finding a way to support those groups and those individuals in their endeavors to then give them the tools necessary that they need to fund, like an ongoing or consistent.
I think we could, I think we could tie in
as well as if you don't have enough girls to form a full team. Right. Those girls can still get one to play.
Our relationship with the AD is through the basketball coach, which is our faculty sponsor. We are, as a public school, our Ultimate team is a social club and not a varsity sport. In order for it to be a varsity sport, we have to establish a state tax money can be for boys and girls. And I think having a sports coach as a faculty sponsor gets us that in very time and allows us access to it. I think if Ultimate was a varsity sport, Title IX would take effect, and schools that have boys teams would have to have girls teams if they wanted to go. That would be the quickest and
We're made to
easiest
feel
way to
bigger.
attack gender equity.
Yeah, I think one of the reports, like, they came out with
Public schools had access to funds to fund their girls teams as well as their
as part of giving. Has there been much work to approach Ultimate on a state level?
right now, it only
so much better.
the girls teams. Three of those are public. There's a lot of work to do. The growth needs to happen, I think, in teachers as teachers to start playing and learning. We need to then have a long-term goal of get them playing, get them to become coaches, get them
just the reason I said a lot of things
at the state level. By advocating, there would be no push in Georgia legislature to get university sport because it's not widespread. It needs to be in Savannah, it needs to be in Macon, it needs to be in Valdosta, it needs to be in Columbus, it needs to be in Coffee County. I think it needs to be in Augusta. There needs to be more outside of bigger cities, and I think that's true all over the country. I think we're seeing a lot of growth, but it's because club players are coaches, and club players exist in big cities. And in order to get more people playing, more children playing, which would then go into colleges and professional.
So on that note, what do you think about, I know like Savannah and Statesboro, for example, right? Large colleges there that do compete in Ultimate, and they have they're established. Yeah, they're established enough programs. What do you think about finding a way to incorporate the collegiate level right now to further grow? What are some tangible ways that we can utilize that?
The people should not pay dues for being a coach. I think if you're a player and a coach, you just pay your dues, and you shouldn't have to pay to coach. To make it more accessible and more feasible for people who are already paying to play and travel and support themselves as players, to then have access to know their own money to be a coach.
Particularly college.
Yeah, particularly.
We kind of modeled in Athens.
Atlanta,
For this year,
small stipend.
cutting
And
men's
a lot of times that stipend isn't covering the expenses of them driving to practice all the time, going to tournaments. So it's just definitely.
possibly
I know we subsidize
new guide players,
for
but
YCC.
so much, so important for us to emphasize.
But it's not like there's widespread.
So is that like growth goals?
I feel comfortable with having coaches.
I mean, like limiting growth goals in some ways, just to make sure that we're, respecting equity.
So like assuming we can get other semi-major cities in Georgia kind of having teams, like what would be barriers to getting like a varsity status? Like that seems like a fairly lofty goal. Like, are there other states that have that?
There are a couple.
I think Vermont was the one that just recently achieved varsity status, but that's the only example I can think of off the top of my head. Most of the time it was a couple of
So the long, just to give you a quick perspective on it, the long-term strategy that we have is the way you become a varsity sport fastest when you have the obstacles that we have is you become an NCAA sport. And so our long-term strategy is to try to get on the Olympic program because the NCAA is under the Olympic Committee. And the Olympic Committee has already told us that they will go with us hand in hand to the NCAA and say this is the best next women's emerging sport that you should put somewhere. And then approach whatever conference we think might be best and have it become a women's emerging sport. And the minute you do that, the high school athletic directors start saying, wow, we should be putting this in place because we've got to help these girls in our school have an opportunity to go play that college sport. That's our long-term strategy. That doesn't really help some of these local things that you guys are talking about, but that's where we're headed. Again, NCAA and the National Federation of High Schools, which is all those athletic directors, they are also members of the US Olympics. So when we're in those meetings talking about the sport, they're sitting there learning about the sport. And I've watched them go and turn to each other and say, did you have any idea? We still have that as an obstacle. Yeah, what a cool sport it is. And they're learning about it now, so I think it'll make it easier, but it's going to take some time.
Hey folks, I need you to start getting some of the points of agreement that you've got down on this board. We have a volunteer scribe here. Okay, I twisted his arm pretty bad, but he volunteered after I twisted hard. No, his writing is not good, but he's still want to write? You write better, it'll be fine. Okay.
Thank you.
So any points that you're agreeing on or points that you're disagreeing on, getting on this board?
One thing that happens that's interesting, especially in our sport, is since it started in the 70s, 80s, whenever, we just now have the first batch of old people, of which I am one.
First batch?
Yeah, it's like the first old people. So what happens is you have kids, and then your kids start to go off to school and do stuff, and you start to have more time. But we haven't, especially in Atlanta, we haven't maintained that alumni network like you would see at a college fraternity, or like you would see at some other organization. And so, you know, we have time, we have resources, we don't have legs, we have ideas, we have networks and connections. So we need to know, we need to be organized, but we need to know what we can do to help you guys too. You know, I'm in a position to reach out to all these guys that can provide something, whatever you need me to provide, beyond coaching, for example.
Yeah, I think about all the people we played with when we were really younger. It's a whole bunch of lawyers and
one thing I didn't know we're trying to wrap up, but I think gender
I mean, any forward-thinking organization would say, okay, what are we doing with the alumni? Because that's your, sometimes that's your funding, sometimes that's your smart people.
Some kind of like AFDC alumni.
It really is something that's an issue with leagues and that once people play, they're off the radar. So well, I think the big one is Olympics lead to NCAA status, which leads to varsity status, which leads to gender equity. So that's the big thing for me. That seems like such a huge game that it doesn't sound possible.
It seems like the connecting thread between those two conversations was presence in schools, right? Like that was the connecting thread between the different elements of equity. And we talked about some ways that we status and the circle that goes through that, and whether or not that's creating, it sounds like, consistent presences at schools and reasons for those people to be there and support for them to be there. Was one of the ideas I took away. Are there other tangible ideas that people had?
What do we think about the idea of trying to focus on Atlanta? I know it'd take a lot of work, obviously, but like using some of these tangible ideas, right, to make Atlanta sort of like a framework for other cities in the state.
Okay, we got to wrap up.
Like the turnaround time for committee, NCAA, to varsity, and all that.
Sorry, everybody, we got to bring the poster forward.
That could happen tomorrow, or that could happen in 30 years. But maybe focusing on Atlanta and saying, let's build a framework, let's build an example that we can then use and bring to other major cities in the state and replicate. What I think about that is an idea.
And if I could just, and learn from other cities, because that's what we're doing like crazy right now. So like in Seattle, they're doing some truly amazing things. And equity industry, we're really getting a lot of diverse communities involved in the sport. And it's the club teams. They're going out and they're coaching and they're building sustainable programs. where those kids know that every day when they show up, there's going to be a coach, and they're going to then have a system where starting in junior high, you start and you know that I can go here, here, and here. And once you're an adult, it's ready to organize a program for you at that level. So there are other models, in addition to Atlanta becoming a model, there are other models Atlanta could learn from. And Seattle was definitely doing some really cool stuff in that
Yeah, Boston too was when we were looking at change orders. Researching AFDC how we could do things better. Seattle and Boston were both big. What they have is they have paid directors. And they have strong funding, strong investment in the high school.
Seattle also lucked out getting into the junior highs, fully funded. And it was almost by happenstance when it happened, and then it took off, and that has really helped everybody. San Francisco is also doing some very cool stuff with equity and diversity. Bay Area District Association is another one to take a look at that's doing some really interesting work.
I thought it was just the collegiate level.
Is that there are going to have to be a large number of people that are going to be talking to Rich, okay, what Rich is saying, an amazing player, and we know that
our diversity and equity focus, we need to also consider how and where we implement policies to support this focus. So the first question, which I think may be smart to just go one by one and sort of hit, I don't know, talk about it. How do we foster and support diversity and equity at the local level? So that's the first one, and then we'll move on to national. So in our community, how do we specifically support equity and in the way of gender and race and class and sexual orientation and age?
So we do actually
big question. But I think I would love, like, particularly personally, I would love to hear from people that work with youth, because that's something that is.
Okay. So why do you partnership?
I mean, I really have no clue. I have sons, and but I do understand through Tracy, who talks about, I talk with her about this a lot, that the town halls have been successful to bring people together to have communication or to talk about these issues. That seems like a supportive environment where people come out and share their ideas.
I'm super prepared.
Well, Hannah, one thing I don't think we're doing is actually talking to people.
So that's
I mean,
giving
platform.
spaces to have.
Right. So I mean, even in the youth, we have people's information, but we decided to go forward with plans for girls without ever talking to the girls. You know, so I think there are things that we could do. And running youth high school or youth leagues, we don't have any way of reaching different socioeconomic. We haven't reached out to them, and we're making it very difficult to jump through a lot of hoops. Even as simple as the USAU online registration system. The steps in that are not intuitive. The UI is bad. You know, I mean, there's not something in that that makes it even easy, and then add in more complications with that, and it makes it very difficult.
Like in my experience, it's been really important to me to have like women coaches, and like I've coached Heide's middle school ultimate team for the past couple years, which is mixed, and like I think that for the girls on that team, like having, and the boys, but having like high school girls coaching them gives them like something to like look up to and someone that they can be in the next couple years, and I think that's like kept a lot of girls play, having like women coaching.
Does Heide have a men's team and a women's team?
Yes.
Yeah. But at the middle school is mixed.
Yeah.
So I think
allocating disproportionate resources towards like programs in like lower socioeconomic areas, because I mean, I don't have a great understanding of the community yet, I'm pretty new, but it seems like a lot of like the great youth ultimate programs are in schools, like in more affluent areas. And so like one of the best ways to like encourage, you know, like more African Americans, Latinos to play is by kind of like heading out to those areas and providing opportunities for those people to play and introducing the sport to them.
Because we don't have the volunteers in power.
Yeah, and to that point, I think finding ways to have a sustainable distribution of coaching resources is really important. I mean, I coach at Emory, and we have 3 coaches for the women's program. It's convenient for all of us. It's the position that we're in individually, and it's difficult to envision a way that it would be easy for us to step out into other communities that are farther away, that we'd be building a program from the ground up, starting from square one. So finding ways to make that a more sustainable development project over time instead of just, I think a point that Kawhi brought up at their mission tour was there's a lot of focus on one-off events that have been really successful, but finding a way to make those sustainable over the long term is more challenging.
This year, the Paideia varsity girls team has been going, like every Wednesday we go to an after-school program in Clarkston, and we practice for an hour, and then when the kids get there, we coach a practice for them for an hour. So it's like throughout the season we've been doing this every week. We have like relationships with all the kids, and I think like that's been a really good experience for them and us.
Well, I want to say something about maybe your point, like how do you go about implementing a program in a place, you know, if anyone has any ideas, in a place that doesn't already have an ultimate program, because I think that's an important need, but, you know, what's a strategy?
I think there like are nonprofits kind of dedicated to doing that. Like I know I used to work with one called Breaking Borders that did that like in like Central and South America, so I'm sure that exists, like something like that exists.
And I think, you know, I see a parallel between Ellen's comment and your comment in the way that, you know, we can understand that this is an issue, but I feel like in our community the problem is that the people at the top don't know how important it really is enough to really address every single part of our budget, part of our planning process, to the point where that happens, you know, and it's actually carried out. So, I mean, my question for y'all is, you know, how can we, what do you, in our community right now, do you guys feel like education about these topics is more important than the action items? I mean, they can go hand in hand, but to me, when I compare our city with other cities, we're kind of behind on just creating educational spaces for these topics. So, like, personally, I would love to just, like Ellen said, give the space to talk about it in some shape or form, especially with the people who make the plans, you know, for these things. And it's so much easier than we think it is, I think. You know, it's just, the people at the top are not going to come to us and ask for these comments. We have to, which is about. These are all great.
I think there needs to be a systematic way to get into schools so that discs are part of PE or whatnot as a way to crack into diversity, because the kids are there, the diversity is there in a lot of these schools, but who's playing the sport often is not always the diverse group of people for whatever reason, financially or interest-wise. So trying to tap on those doors. I don't know who has access to. There are certain middle schools that have let Ultimate in, and it's been very successful at feeding kids through the system, and that needs to be more and more, I think. So I don't know if you can get help from the parent organization to get you know, important people into communities to speak about the sport. I mean, they're doing it in smaller venues, but I think the schools are really the key to the diversity thing.
And just to bring it back to Heidi's comment, you know, those resources have to be disproportionate, which I think is what we struggle with. You know, people will go give clinics in areas where we don't have a lot of people playing Ultimate, but it's often a one-off thing or often a one-off, you know, effort.
I think developing like more sustainable ways to allocate those resources. Like you were talking about how Paideia goes out every week. Like, why isn't that something that Emory also does, that Georgia Tech also does? Like, if that can be a more established program amongst people in universities that are already involved in Ultimate and want to like kind of spread this message of equality, I think that we should leverage those existing resources and try to distribute that at a more sustainable level. So like it could be like a weekly thing or a bi-weekly thing instead of just like a one-off clinic.
I think we could put like more focus on public schools too. Like I don't know, does Druid Hills have an Ultimate team?
I coach it.
Yes, you do. I just like I feel like I haven't heard as much. Like I've heard a lot about Paideia and like haven't heard as much of like other public schools in the area having Ultimate teams. And I think like if that were more like widespread, like a more widespread occurrence, it would be like definitely more open to more socioeconomic backgrounds, and that like obviously like it's great that Paideia has a team, but like a private school, like it is a certain background that you have when you go to Paideia, and that's like awesome. But I think we could spread programs at that level to other schools as well. I guess I have a little bit of an issue with the resources that we have and how we can focus them. Well, I love School Ultimate. For public schools, it is a difficult row to get into, and we have not had support for, and we'll talk about, I mean, this is kind of youth oriented, but it speaks to diversity and equity, but we have not, I don't know that USAU has assisted any public schools in setting up district-wide Ultimate systems, and to have resources to be able to go in and talk to bureaucracies, athletic directors, and establish something is something that local level volunteers do not have experience doing. And so I think we actually might be better served to go into boys and girls clubs if USAU has those kind of connections already, or YMCAs or that sort of thing. I'm just saying, we have limited resources and we're burning people out. So I don't know, but I don't want to overtake this whole conversation with just youth, because I know there's more about this than just, it's a thing I think about.
A lot of it does exist, but it's not very accessible.
We can try and move on to this one. I think they're all kind of intermixed with each other. The next question is, how do we educate ourselves and our communities to be allies?
You have to know it exists. You have to talk about it.
Got to find the willing experts to share their information.
So I think what a lot of parents are
Along with that, just like being willing to listen, especially like people who have experienced very different.
Back to your girls on the run idea. How does that
I think just being good role models too, right? There's a certain language you can use that's a bit more accepting. There's a certain, way to be a little bit. I mean, PC is one thing, but also just accepting and welcoming and all inclusive. Especially someone who's at like a level who's a coach or something like that.
Yeah, I think to that point, something I feel pretty strongly about is, especially with gender equity, because that's just what I know better, is really encouraging those who have the power, i.e. males with gender equity, to spread, to make it kind of like give it a cool factor, right? And as a community, we can make gender equity a priority, but until men and women see role models executing that conversation in a way that's like cool, and they need, those role models want it to happen and make it a priority, I think it will stay more stagnant than if our leaders and our people that our youth look up to and our parents and our coaches like make it a priority and really give it a cool factor and make it sort of like percolate and lead to
I can speak to just a little bit to the, I went through the coaching development program, like level 1 certification when I was starting in Wisconsin, and I don't really remember there being a focus on equity within that as they're training like up and coming coaches. And I also felt as though it was very much framed, it was being taught by someone who had mostly coached high school boys. So everything that he talked about was very centered around his experience with them, which did not speak to my experience coaching younger college women at that time. And I feel like a lot of those questions didn't really get answered, and there was no emphasis on like, hey, we actually need to be challenging the idea that women can't, shouldn't, or don't play sports. Like that's really important, especially if you coach a college or like a high school boys team, youth boys team. So I feel like there's already this great educational program through USAU. I would love to see that first.
And I think stratifying that by age group is also important because the issues you deal with between middle school, high school, and college are really quite different. And how you engage girls or women in sport at those ages are very different challenges. Also, college coach.
So I think it's great that we don't have Title IX. There's nothing to regulate it.
The final question is, what are some tangible ways that we can honor our commitment to gender equity? I guess that goes for USAU and
together the girls team because there's really no consequences.
Like one of the ways that has like the biggest kind of viewer or the biggest audience is by like prioritizing women's games film over men's sometimes. Like I know that like a lot of people don't quite understand that equity doesn't mean like giving women's and men's film kind of equal footage, whatever. Like since men's film has been prioritized for so long, like it's not gonna even out until we start prioritizing women sometimes. Yeah.
And visibility is huge with that too. Like if you're an advocate for this stuff, share the hell out of every single like multi-world women's specific article, women's footage at all levels.
Yeah. I think recently, I don't know how many people have seen like the EULA thing happened where like the multi-world reporter only recorded or looked at the men's division and only wrote about that. And I don't think Ulti-World's responded to that yet.
They did.
Like they did a
podcast.
Yeah,
Charlie.
And that's just kind of the opposite of what we do right now. Yeah, I don't feel like Ulti-World.
So I guess a good question on that note would be, do you guys feel like USAU should have some accountability for those external outsourced news and visibility platforms like the AUTL? I mean, do you think that they should be involved in that? Do you think they should be involved in Multi-World? Do you think they should be involved in like other sources?
Then you ask for
yeah, MSX. Yeah.
I mean, I think Ultimate's a small enough sport that like I'm pretty sure like most of us know exactly what we're talking about right now, and like so like I'm guessing that USAU does too. Like they have that power to get that knowledge out to everyone and like to say something about it. Like why wouldn't they?
So what, do you guys know what kind of relationship like USAU and Ulti-World have? Because I'm thinking one way to get good visibility like through Ulti-World, which is a forum that a lot of people get their information through, is to kind of have more female voices and more diverse voices that are writing for Ulti-World. You know. That's awesome. Yeah, there you go. No, you're doing great. I'm just saying it's hard. No, yeah, I know. Yeah. How could USAU be part of that? Like,
are they part of it? I mean, I just took them as an independent media outlet.
The media outlet.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, well, they like
but they
don't
could
have
make
a
it.
say in it,
Yeah.
but they could like
not from a policy
like,
standpoint.
yeah, but they could like advertise it or even like take part in it. It's not like there's like 1,000 news sites they have to keep up with about Ultimate. Like it's kind of like one. So like I think like why not be involved with that? Right. It's not very hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
I also feel like, you know, with Ultimate, just as he's saying, we're a really special sport, and to have these radical thoughts about, oh, government never has control over those things, or they never have input, I think that's really, like, cuts things off, right? Like, I personally think that USAU should be involved in the AUDL, and they should be involved in Multi-World, just because if we are a community that has these values that we say we have, to allow small groups of people that have more power to spread these issues widely is not necessarily the best thing for our sport, you know, and to say that the structures in place prior, with media, government, and things like that, are the reason that we can't have those things connect and help hold each other accountable. I think is shortening.
It does seem like as our governing body, they should take a stand, one way or the other. Yes.
The other thing is, like, this isn't the first time Ultiworld has done something like that. Like, I think consistently, like, the boys' articles often come out first. Like, they do a Facebook post about some men's team and not the women's team in a tournament. Like, they consistently cover, I think, boys and men's ultimate more than girls and women's, and it's frustrating because it's like you don't really have another place to go for ultimate news. Yeah.
Things along those lines, if they have the infrastructure necessary to support the instructors without love speak. Right? So
it's really hard because it's a private organization, and they don't have unlimited resources. And I completely agree with you. So how do you like put an impetus on them to like actually go out of their way and like provide that like much needed like women's and mixed coverage when like objectively they don't generate the clicks and like they're not going to generate as much money. So I like completely agree with that.
It's like circular logic where as long as they don't keep producing them, there aren't going to be clicks. And
yeah, I think it's in the little things, like what you were saying, like with like just sharing like women's articles on Facebook more often, like that doesn't cost any money.
No,
that doesn't take any resources.
And that's from the basic level, like from us, like being those clicks.
Yeah, but even like from their like Facebook page, if they were to just like release those first, like it's just the order of like operations basically. Like you might as well like promote it as much as you can without, like there are ways to promote women's sports without actually having like a price difference. So like why not maximize it?
I was confused because I thought that Cut Camp was promoting the high school coverage in Ultiworld, but they didn't catch any flack on this, unless I misread this wrong. But because I was thinking they were sponsoring it, but nobody shouted out to Cut Camp and Java and those guys and said, "You guys, you run tournaments, you know better. Why didn't you?" As the sponsor for this coverage, like that's another angle to be talking to. Right. Well, but they're running girls stuff too.
Something I think to your point, Izzy, is I love that, by the way. Sorry. I think something that I've been thinking a lot about is that I think there should be ways to really have some big data on these issues. You know, like for our Hustle Forum, I did some homework and sat there and counted Facebook views from the Hustle versus Ozone last year, and it was like overwhelming. So I think something that could really help moving forward is just getting data, you know, and obviously that takes man-woman power, but I think that's compelling.
I would also say that I haven't necessarily been impressed by USAU's communication efforts, so if that could be an agenda for them as well, that they could put resources into even communication with members, but also communication just in general on promoting things. So
start to put down on this board, we have a volunteer scribe here, some of the points that you're agreeing on and maybe some that you're disagreeing on. And
or we could kind of go through and say like, let's regurgitate. Let's process. We can process.
Yeah.
Okay, so.
So your hypothetical situation, you have.
We'll start with our first big question was
what do you do?
How and where we implement policies as we build on diversity and equity. So I'll start from the top. We said that we need more spaces to have educational conversation and open dialogue. We said that we need for those efforts to have some sort of sustainable schedule so that they're not one-off events and they can and somehow maybe implement them in our calendars and our schedules. Let's see, we need more female coaches or just strong women role models. We need to allocate disproportionate resources to oppressed schools, demographics, structures. Am I talking too fast? Let's see what else. We need a more sustainable coach distribution to schools who don't have stronger programs or programs at all. We need some sort of systematic way to get into schools, particularly public schools. And I'll say, whoever was making that comment, Denise Koo is working on that with DeKalb County, which is really great. She's snaps for her. She's killing it. So that's really great. And to that point, I think we mentioned that it would be great to have maybe some kind of resource from USAU or some person with more power than just youth volunteerism to go into the schools to tell them how great it is and that they need it in their programs. Let's see what else. Public schools need more resources, which we mentioned. We would suggest that there would be an equity component to the coaches development program. Let's see. And then, you know, jury's out on this one, but USAU's relationship to Ultiworld and AUDL and media sources.
I think that could include like our role in that reporting as well.
Okay.
Not necessarily just USAU, but
yeah,
as a community.
Yeah. I said that I think we need more data on these facts. We want increased communication efforts from USAU. And that is all I have, but I'm a little ADD, so if you guys can remember anything that I didn't say.
It's a pretty good list.
Yeah, I think so too. Cool. Thanks. We can keep talking. Seems like we have more time.
Go film somebody else now.
You did a good job. You guys did a good job. I can only get 2, so I chose you guys.
Appreciate it.
We're the prettiest.
Alright, we're going to try to stay on schedule. So I'm going to quickly just go down the list of what my group talked about. These are in no way like brainstorm, like we did not come up with this stuff. These are things that I'm sure a lot of you have heard previously. We talked about people who have a seat at the table, those that have power and privilege, sometimes need to step away and give up their seat at the table so that other people can come and enter that discussion and be heard. We talked about a tactical thing that USAU could do is when they're negotiating media contracts that they do not sign a contract if there's not a gender equity component of that contract that our partner is going to adhere to. We talked about rebranding the divisions and getting away from the language of open versus girls or women, making things like as equitable as possible in that way. Someone mentioned that some high schools have been experimenting with doing single-gendered seasons for part of the year. So have like a boys and a girls team in one season, and then the other season be actual like co-ed. And so you get exposure to both, but you have some sort of division and equity in that way. And then we talked about another tactical thing that USAU could do, which is create some best practices for the volunteers and the organizers at the youth level so that they know like a really good way to run a tournament is to stagger your men's and women's games, stagger finals so that you have equal coverage and visibility for all the participants. Don't do the men's and women's games at the same time. And then we had a shout out for Fulcrum Media. A lot of coaches in the room said that having the Fulcrum coverage of the women's club season at Nationals this past year was incredible for the girls that play in their high school programs. So shout out to Fulcrum. And we also talked about Title IX and how the Title IX funding restrictions do filter down to the high school level, and we need to be aware of that. Someone mentioned that as Ultimate grows, like our compliance with Title IX, it may turn in, it's a really good quote. Our compliance
we may have to move from self-officiating into self-governance, right? Like if we don't get federal dollars in the near future, we may just have to self-govern in the same way that we self-govern on the field. And so make that equity ourselves, not just rely, it's, you know, it's not a stick, it's a carrot, right? That's it.
I don't know if you guys can even see these, and I think we may have missed a few, so I'm just going to go down my list on my paper. First thing we talked about was that our community, and specifically, we don't feel like we have spaces to talk about these issues, so just creating events and spaces and educational times and even conversations to talk about these things is the first thing. The second thing is to allocate disproportionate resources to oppressed schools and oppressed groups. So, you know, not saying that instead of having, you know, one clinic at X school, we need to have 10 clinics at X school, or, you know, allocate disproportionate resources to people who, in groups that we don't feel are represented in Ultimate well. We need to have a more sustainable coaches distributions. So rather than having a great program that has 3 coaches, why not have another new program with one of those coaches? Let's see what else. We said that we want more resources allocated to public schools and more assistance with that. One tangible thing that we thought of was having an equity component for the coaches development program, which is through USAU. Let's see. And the last thing is that we said that we would like to examine, and I know it's one of the topics up on the screen, the other 6, but we want to examine USAU's role with media outlets and their relationship with the AUDL, and not think of it as so much of a, you know, governing bodies have not in the past had, you know, push over these types of organizations, and think of it more as we're a radical sport, we should treat this radically, and we should address this in a way that our community wants us to.
Okay, I have the courage to do this. I'm Denise Koo. I'm actually the host parent here for Druid Hills High School. So we had a lot of lively discussion, and I think to go to the points of convergence first, I think there was a lot of interest in more systemization in the school systems, especially public schools, because that would get both at gender and socioeconomic equity, since we didn't have much of a discussion actually on socioeconomic, which I think is a challenge, given that it's supposed to be an equitable sport, because we don't need a lot of resources, and yet it requires resources that generally come from parents who have resources, or to get to these tournaments, those resources. And so we're excited, I was excited actually to hear about the foundation. But we were talking about elementary schools and making sure you introduce the sport earlier, and we liked the fact that there are some resources, but they're sort of hard to find on the USAU site, so it would be helpful to find curriculum, documents, things that anybody could use, and especially to encourage parents, perhaps who don't play the sport, to also help facilitate the sport in the school system, so accessible teaching resources. A lot of discussion about Girls on the Run as a great example. What, you know, I don't know what we would call Girls Ultimate besides gum, but something that would be more of a curriculum that anybody could use. Again, it doesn't have to be a player. So those are the points, really, essentially, of convergence in our group. There was a lot of lively discussion about the balancing issues because of the fact that Ultimate is still a somewhat young sport. And certainly speaking for our high school, we're so happy this year not to have to borrow from other schools. And the issue of gender equity is a challenge when we barely have enough people to make a team. And they're all boys, because we try to get girls out there and they don't want us to come because they're insecure and they've never played before. We really need to get them earlier. I mean, I really love this sport to be introduced to a lot younger, so we've got to start earlier. So that whole balancing issue of boys requiring things, requiring equity when it's right now it's parent-driven is a bit of a challenge. And I think some of these issues were raised earlier about resources and pushing more for girls' sports. And I don't think we had agreement on how to balance it. So.
to honor our commitment to gender equity. And we talked about putting money towards these women's programs right away, immediately funneling money into the programs that need to grow the most. A big point we had was creating allies in our school systems. So how do we add it to the curriculum? How do we make Ultimate part of the PE curriculum? How do we have teachers in our schools that can, get to the athletic directors that can help support funding to make Ultimate a varsity sport? I don't think like the public schools, it's usually just a club sport. What else did we talk about? Taking practices from other cities. I think a good model is Seattle. They have a lot of varsity, I think it's a varsity level sport there for most of those schools. And one thing that I was really interested in is we keep focusing on Atlanta, we keep focusing on these major cities, but if we want to build up this sport, we have to go outside of the city. So we talked about building up programs in Augusta, building up programs in Savannah, like hitting these other major cities in our state, and we're going to make it more visible overall. Did I miss anything, my group?
We are down to 35 minutes. Those of you that want to talk about semi-pro and how USAU interacts with that, please go right here. Those of you that want to work on youth and how we're going to grow Ultimate, up here, please. And then Olympic dream can be right here. And then branding, that where Stacey was in that corner.
We good?
Getting closer. All right.
Congratulations. Yeah. Was it May? Yes, it was May.
I'll facilitate it if there's a topic of dialogue. If there's a dialogue, I'll facilitate. I think
If not, we have a packet.
Hi.
Do you have a curriculum?
I do. I'm here.
Okay.
Oh, thank you for being patient. So we're talking about youth structure, and I want to throw this out there. This is the question that we're discussing. So we'll have it in front of them. And
Let me read it. What are the best investment opportunities in Youth Ultimate that will ensure competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention into adulthood?
right. So to kind of frame it, right now I didn't bring the right thing. That's all right. We'll just go with this.
So the hypothesis right now is that the current structure is not instilling that, is not achieving that outcome.
Part of it is this is even as Henry kind of talked about in his speech. What's working in Boca Raton isn't necessarily going to work in New York City. So part of it is, what do you think about for Atlanta as the best structure? What do you think for what you've got now, where you could go? You can use other cities as an example, or you could just say, kind of like Hannah was saying, a radical idea. Like, what if we tried XYZ? You know, like.
Atlanta is unique in that the AFDC as an organizing body is from the youngest to the highest level. That's not the case in other cities, which I think gives us the opportunity to have the most consistent touch points for players, you know, where there is the same organization that monitors the middle school league that is then supporting the higher club levels. So that from like a customer as a player retention model, you in theory would have the most consistent basis. So that is a positive in the form of retention.
So it's an opportunity.
Well, it exists.
It exists, but I would argue that it's not, the juniors is really kind of separate from
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
others. So I don't know that there's a lot of cohesion.
There
There's opportunities.
There are opportunities to improve the glue that binds it together.
Well, I think though that this kind of dichotomy, at least between students, sorry,
No, go ahead.
Is that it kind of demonstrates though that I don't think that we can necessarily expect the USAU to support everything as one big centralized government, right? And what happens is we have to rely very heavily, like you said, since we're looking for local solutions, we have local organizations all that are working towards the same goal, right? So at a global level, the USAU could potentially provide some sort of kind of higher level reward or so on and so forth, or incentives that can push down so that maybe programs have more money that they can spend, right, towards bettering other organizations within that, you know, so on and so forth. So it's some sort of incentivization structure that allows that cohesion to occur between the two, or at least all the organizations towards that higher goal.
It's not a turnkey model where you just say, here's the model, implement it in this city. There are...
Well, yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
It needs to be decentralized. Exactly. It needs to be locally derived, right? And so then the idea is that you have to help foster these locally derived solutions. In this case, the RCC as well as the AFDC. They serve two separate, like completely separate, roles in the ultimate community here in Atlanta, both of them very important, right?
This is probably a pretty, in my mind, is a very pivotal moment in that you are having different tiers of players kind of graduate out of their competitive, and it's an opportunity for them to engage in investing into a younger generation, where if you leverage the life cycle of the Atlanta players, you're then able to take former club players and then encourage them to coach at the middle school level, which then kind of provides a full circle, which will then kind of close some of the gap between the older players not being very aware of the middle school and the juniors program.
I have a question, honestly, about these priorities. So we're saying the priorities of this youth structure are competitive opportunities, continued growth, and retention. And I'm just wondering if we would all agree that those are the three main priorities of a youth program in Atlanta.
Well, so I'm really confused about these programs. It says, what are the best investment opportunities? So first off, what do you mean by investment opportunities?
We're talking about resource investment.
Right, so, because then that, a lot more questions raised from that, like where do these resources come from, how do we increase them, and so on and so forth. Who's governing those resources? What we're getting at right there is like, not necessarily, like should it be centralized or should it be decentralized? Right? So decentralized be it through some sort of grant opportunity or something along those lines, allowing individual organizations to but yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. It's like, are these
we learned a lot of valuable lessons throughout our history about how to get
my thing is kind of off topic now, but I think that this question in general is getting at, regardless of where these investments are coming from, when we get them, whatever they are, what are we going to put them into? And I think that a lot of what we just talked about with equity is having some kind of structure. I think AFDC and AFDC Junior stuff is awesome. I think middle school is awesome, but I think that the key to retention and opportunities is this.
I have that knowledge.
So it's not just kind of like an after-school activity that some kids can be to, and so many of them cannot. And like, how do we reach those schools and those minorities and those young girls who I didn't get the chance to start playing Ultimate until I went to college, right? I want these girls to have it in their middle school and in their high school. It's something that they go to all the time. They can stay after school. They're already there. They don't have to get somewhere else to them. They have to go somewhere else. And I think that's a huge investment opportunity, is to try to find, I don't know the best way, to find some way to put that into the school system.
Even the Laurel Ridge is a good example, which is the feeder elementary school here to Druid Hills. It's a soccer program, but a soccer league comes in and does the soccer clinic at the after-school program at Laurel Ridge. So, and it's only like once a week, but it provides kids an opportunity that don't get to play soccer at the Y or somewhere else, an opportunity to enjoy the game of soccer and learn about soccer. It's almost, it's consistent, yeah. It's always there. And it would be the same kind of thing thing, at least to start, would be whether it's AFDC, pushing the county to let them come in. Our high school boys actually went to 2 elementary schools, Laurel Ridge and Fernbank, last summer, and taught kids in the summer school program how to play Ultimate, and they absolutely loved it. Our high school boys enjoyed getting out there, and the kids loved it. And it's really getting everybody that can be involved at that elementary school level, so that the kids have at least exposure to the sport. So by the time they get to the middle school, then they know, oh, I know that sport, I can go try out for that team. But I really think it'd be great if we could get an elementary school league, just like we had, rec soccer for little kids. It'd be wonderful to start a program like that.
But then you're talking about maybe the investment,
that's where the resources
to go to all these other schools. Not everybody's sitting right here, but there's, how many other schools that across,
every county.
Here's the thing, the whole thing would look so different if we weren't breathlessly trying to find someone who could coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like it's certifying coaches and paying them. And then if we had coaches lined up out the door, like that's the problem. I'm not saying it's the coach's fault, but that, like in terms of investing in resources, that's what we need somehow. So that the program's there to send to the elementary, and that fields are hard, right? Fields are hard, fields are awful. But if we had coaches that were certified, like trained and paid, it would make all the difference.
Because that soccer league is a paid coach, right? Out there teaching kids out there.
Look, is that a tryout that goes from school to school?
There's good stuff out there.
Not that I know of. I think it was a league that broke off from another one. They kind of started their own, so I think they were trying to do it to grow and recruit players. So they figured if they started that way, then the kids would get invested in their group, in their club, and then they would come on and play. They did not charge.
I like that idea because then you're not looking for a coach for every single school.
Right.
Start a whole new program.
Right.
Way more people.
So what about curriculum for the key?
Which is different than what you asked, and maybe it's different.
As an example, I question, the boys team coach had for years, had like a little session of Ultimate that goes on, but the girls coach couldn't, because she didn't really know how to play. So there was something to teach
like, is it you just offer that
something that they go to, like
through USA Ultimate, through AFDC, it gets aggregated into a place. So for me, forum, I can go in and be like, hey, I got a team brand new, I got a team of combo players.
Of who we are
What's out there? What problems
to get into the bureaucracy of schools.
Right.
And to make
every single one's going to be different, right? To make it part of that knowledge base is, this was my situation, and these were the things I learned.
So, if USIU has examples of how they have assisted school systems in developing Ultimate, that would be key. But I almost feel it would be easier for us to move into Boys and Girls Clubs, YMCAs, because they are used to having people come in and perform a function or do a rec league, but schools are a much more difficult issue. And that's a problem that I will say, and you guys fixed this with the YCC stuff with your second round of adjustments, but first putting the mandate on of saying that everything has to be, you have to be involved in a school-based league to participate in a YCC club national competition is very divergent, and we don't have the, without giving us any assistance to get into particularly public schools to make it happen. How do we make a case for an athletic director who is already stretched thin or superintendent of a county school district to get in and more successful in private schools?
The answer is money. That's a valid
very specific suggestion.
There's 4 different answers to that question.
I think USAU should hire somebody. Colleges and universities do this all the time. They hire people just to go out and travel all over the country and be ambassadors for their schools. So I could see USAU hiring somebody. Yeah, so their job would be to go to school districts and principals and
teachers and just educate and
to kind of push back,
evangelize the sport and come with programs and resources.
Would you rather
suggestions?
send one team or 2 teams to some tournament?
What's that?
Would you rather have that? Do you think that person brings more? Would you rather have that person or use their salary to bring 1 or 2 more teams to like a tournament or something along those lines?
I think someone whose full-time job is to go and evangelize the sport to these, because I mean these are the most dedicated volunteers in the city of Atlanta, and they have trouble getting into school, navigating the bureaucracies at schools. Like you need people with real training who understand how the bureaucracies work, who can bring the stats, who can talk about the Olympic Committee, who just know this sport and can.
So I'm gonna
and help convince schools, administrators.
Disagree a little bit. I think that there's two opportunities. First of all, I really like your idea on a nonprofit. So I think that USAU could have a structured approach to targeting national organizations like Boys and Girls Club to leverage that, which is then like almost a carte blanche. So they get approved by the Boys and Girls Club, and then it becomes part of the curriculum throughout, and that checks off the exposure. And then also I think that we can, as a city, take the thing that we talked about in the very beginning to engage in and leverage the resources of the USAU to be ambassadors for the city, and have people who are involved in local parenting boards to work to get that in, a Fulton County, where someone in the, insert school here's PTA would have more leverage than Joe Blow from a corporate office. Oh, right. And I think that it doesn't.
Part of your job would be to build relationships. So it's like just like a university they build relationships with their alumni in their cities and their diversities. They come and they meet with parent volunteers.
So I think that, but allocating responsibilities, getting it into a public school system probably should be supported by, but the onus should be within the city, while getting into a nonprofit that has a wider branch should lie on the organization as a whole, USAU.
Yeah, there's very few real school systems, and I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe Seattle's is affiliated with USAU. There's a school program. Did Arlington work with you guys on that?
Arlington, Virginia. Yeah, I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, it'd be cool. It's just we don't have any best practices. We don't have any.
Right.
So the coach certification class, talks about stuff, but you're, I think, Dan, talking about more support than that. Instead of like, here's how you do it, good luck. You're like, here's how you do it, and I'm gonna, support anyone who wants to be meeting with the athletic director to talk about facts, to get something started.
Right. So it's like Kathy gets a meeting with the athletic director at Grady. She says, here are the things I want to cover, and then she has somebody at USA Ultimate to call and say, here's what I want to talk about. Give me some information. What did somebody in Arlington, Virginia do that really worked there? Like, give me some ideas. If you're in town, can you come meet with me? Like whatever that support is, that I feel like that's lacking.
I think AFDC has done some great stuff, but we're having to reach out individually. So come to my school and would you train the PE coaches, or will you do this, bring people and show the school that, but the people, these parent volunteers it's a full-time job, and we all have these other jobs, and it's tough. It just puts.
Which is the issue, the other supply issue is the coaching.
Yeah.
And it's really hard with people having full-time jobs to, get off and coach twice a week at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, which is the middle of the week.
Right. And then if you have a coach, but the coach ends up leaving every year, you're struggling to find another coach.
Relationship management.
It's really,
I think that's the thing that I hope you guys recognize, and I'm sure you do. But it seems like we're fairly stable
right? In a high school league, in a middle school league, but it's pretty precarious.
I mean, yeah, a parent loses a lot of incentive once his or her child graduates.
I don't know enough about AFDC as far as my point in the whole organization of Ultimate, but I know like with our summer swim league, there's ASA Swim Association, and they pull all the swim teams together under one umbrella, and then we have like a website page or whatever that we go to. So if we are seeking a coach,
That's what the coach is, yeah.
we do a posting, you know, coach needed for this, and coaches that are looking for jobs or want jobs can go to that site too and see who's looking for a coach. So it's by putting all the teams under one umbrella to look for resources, whether it's coaches or volunteers or players, whatever. It's just a place to like one forum to go to. And I don't know if AFDC has the resources to do that. That might be a place to get resources from USA to the colleges. I mean, you know, I'm sure that. And that's exactly what AFA, most of their kids come from the college. They come from Tech, they come from.
Our problem is the college season is the same as our high school season. If we moved high school to the fall, lovely fields and stuff, but then we're kind of out of now the USA system too. Their high school system is pretty much spring. Which doesn't, I think that's my other kind of a little bit, beefing a little bit, but is the though you say it needs to work differently in each place, for youth, there's this blanket, this is how it's going to work, and we're going to do high school in the spring, and we're going to do club in the fall, and we're going to grow this thing this way. But for Georgia, it might not work that way because we have soccer in the spring and lacrosse in the spring, and it would be easier for us to field.
A really good action item to push back on the USAU to say, if a resource allocation that's lacking is coaches, and we think that we could develop a college coaching initiative, which would then work into the retention model of the youth structure development, then maybe there could be an exploration of seeing what it looks like for having
right, for players. And unless they happen to go become teachers, the people who have the knowledge base to be coaches are often community coaches. Like, there's a ton of great community coaches. Everyone's right. Like, I mean, that's a tough.
A lot of places they play mixed, very organized.
Like coming up with a way for an Ivy League community coach to be able to have a touch point in the school and just what is the nature of that relationship?
Flexible in the USAU requirements for
have to learn what that relationship
is that in Georgia, the rest of the sports, if I'm going to talk to an athletic director, they understand that 8th graders can play up, that you can switch between JV and varsity divisions X amount of times between games on different sports. And now we've got this very rigid system where 8th graders are not supposed to be playing baseball. That doesn't help us with growth and retention, particularly in the girls section, which we want to grow. We want to be able to do that, and we want girls to be able to play open and girls, if they want to. We want to let competition be open, I would say, and let them be where they can be, or both. Don't limit, which I feel like with the rules that have come into place right now, we've limited that structure, and we're not encouraging girls' growth.
What do the girls think? I want to know what they think.
In terms of playing mixed and women's, it sucks to have to pick. That's true.
But what if they were in different seasons?
Well, so that's that would be awesome.
Yeah, I like that because I was in Seattle for spring break and play with the YC
so I think we know the formulas for growth, right?
There's certain these teams things that are repeatable. So connected.
I find that it's easier to
the girls that play on
specifically girls.
The Seattle YC team destroys everyone, and they're great. But they're also this tight knit unit.
There's formulas,
works, and they're I think
what we're talking
I was told
about
that one of the most important foundations for Ultimate as a coach is to come back. Right, so the first thing you can do is come back and teach coach a second year, which is like seems obvious but doesn't happen a lot. And that's one thing that I like about Atlanta is that playing with like Meg, she's like played with me on women's league and stuff like that. And yeah, and so she also like is one of those women will come and like coach me. Like 7th grade Izzy, I was like, I want to be that. So like, you know, just seeing them familiarize and like, you know, they come back, and so that's great. But like going back to like the different seasons.
I guess it's the.
Like, personally, if I had the choice, I would play rules and requirements. I don't like playing mixed. It's not as, you know, it's not as fun. I like having a community of women that
we'd like to have more teams.
I feel like it goes a long way with retention too, right? So I started playing in college. If I hadn't built that that was basically my family, I don't know if I would still be playing, you know, if it was mandated that we were playing.
You can have a school-based
I don't know if I would have jived as well.
Yeah.
So if it was mandated to have mixed and then women.
At the same time, it's just like youth level where you've never played before and you're just trying to give people a chance to play. If you're not having enough girls to make a girls team, if this is going to help more people come out so that you can have a girls team in the spring or something like that, maybe it's a good option.
Yeah, the other thing I would say is if the rule is that girls can't go to a different school to play that has a girls team, it would be great if they could do that, because you know, if we got 1 or 2 girls at Druid Hills and we cannot form a girls team, yeah, can they go over to Grady, or can they go to Decatur, or can they go to another to a high school team so that they can play with just girls and have that opportunity?
And what's the reason that they can't? You know, what's the argument against that?
Well, and I think they are like Meld has that function, and what they're hoping is that then, you know, if the biggest part of Meld happens to be Decatur girls, that after 2 years of this conglomerate, they break off and Decatur has a girls team, like that sort of model.
Go ahead. Yeah, I mean, like, the girls, Atlanta girls didn't have a girls team, but our junior high team, like, yeah, come play with us. But they weren't allowed to play in games, and so that was just like, they totally got screwed, and that was not fair.
And that actually may be a county thing. I mean, I know we're not a varsity sport.
That's the thing about
but it may be more of a county thing that the county won't let them do that.
Right.
Go ahead, babe.
Do you want to talk? I started playing in high school, and I started out on a mixed team, like pretty exactly what we were just talking about. Like, we didn't have enough girls in my district to form like a women's team. So I played mixed in the fall, and then in the spring we had enough to create like our first girls team. But it was also my team was a mix of 2 schools, and I really
some stuff that we're all really in agreement on here. I would love it if you could get on the post-it board, and if there's some stuff that you're really conflicted about and having a hard time, make sure you get that on there too, because we want to get that in front of the whole group and make sure
it
we're all.
definitely would have, like my girls team would never have happened.
Sorry, we literally are getting kicked out in 10 minutes. This is not happening.
But we are like split right now, and I think that like the growth that was that came with having like a joint team that was like available to our entire district really helped like get ultimately my community up to a point where we were able to find like 2 separate.
That kind of sounds like a fall and spring, you know, like an opportunity to do.
Where did you go to high school? Where?
So we got
that's what I mean. Just like what area, like what structure can we like look to for ideas? Okay, yes. It's in New Jersey.
So folks, we are getting kicked out in 10 minutes, so we need to just get some of your thoughts, the stuff where you are in massive agreement and the stuff where you're very conflicted and not happy. If we could get just 2 bullets of each of those up on this post-it note board, then we can get that in front of everybody so everybody knows what are the big challenges and what should we just simply do. You got 5 minutes.
So, yeah, and I'd like that to come from y'all. What you heard that you want to make sure gets taken away tonight. And it can be more than 2, but, you know, certainly the biggest
One of the
points.
things that I heard that I really would like to be on board is that, like bureaucracy thing we were talking about, with at least trying to get either USAU or AFDC helping when either parents or coaches go and are trying to build bigger programs at school or build programs at all at school.
Start at the elementary school level.
Yeah, I would love to go and help at some elementary school that doesn't have it, but I have no idea how to do that.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
So I just think that's what
We hear that we just did that as parents. You know, I need to coach at Laurel Ridge Elementary, so I went and was like, "Will you teach an ultimate segment in your PE class?" And he was like, "Yeah." And one of our parents got a grant from USAU to get discs, and we gave them to the 2 elementary schools that we knew the coaches at. So it's that same kind of thing. It's like really just going and meeting the principals and the coaches and saying,
Are y'all,
will you do this?
as parents, familiar with the AFDC grants organization?
So, but I think that's
good once you have the player.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like it.
Do you want us to write it on the big board?
Yeah, I do.
Is Delia gonna read it?
Yeah, she wants to write it.
I don't see a pen.
So that's what I kind of heard was, yes, there's, I think,
He's looking
So support for coaching schools, right?
So it's
support
on the
from
school
AFDC or USAU.
Right. So what I heard was like this idea of like a resource page, really, even where you are pairing people who are looking for, right, you're pairing the coach who is willing and able with the parent who's in the community or the teams that need it, right? So, yeah, it could be as easy as
So what do we
a
call
message board on the AFDC.
Here's a Dan sort of traveling salesman.
Right. We want USAU to help our best practices in how to deal with schools and set up schools.
Are those 2 separate points though, or are they the same? They're 2 separate.
I think the local, I think coaching is sort of out of
Right. Yeah, because I kind of heard.
Yeah, I think getting in the elementary schools and the school systems is kind of like also giving us the pointers, helping us get the pointers of how to deal with the school systems and the bureaucracy.
We kind of feel we're reinventing the wheel every time. Right, and I'm sure you guys are
having some
being successful someplace
Otherwise,
else.
like, you know, whoever has time,
You know,
that's great, like finding.
yes, and so I was trying to think through how it would look, and maybe we don't need to get into the details right now, but
Words on what
you know, it's not even necessarily people at USA Ultimate that have that information. I mean, but right, and creating something where people, there's a way to get more information. There's best practices, there's a pointers, there's a checklist, there's whatever, but it's something you can find. Yes, yes.
Something that even
he wants to go do something, and he's like, what do I do?
Right,
How do I do it? How do I go about it?
And a PE coach who leaves the next year, then it's not starting over.
Right.
Like there's something in play in the system that's very standardized.
Sessions at YCC
Yeah.
where parents can get together.
That's a great idea.
Yes.
They did last year, it was good.
What the US Open convention
Yeah.
was meant to be.
Yes.
Yeah, it's all.
It'd be even better if there was.
Yeah.
That's your biggest grouping of parents.
One in 6 don't go well.
Do we have any other kind of points of agreement?
The other big thing that we all seem to agree on is that there seems to be a lot of limitations that have no
Can you get your boards up front? We've got 3 minutes.
Requiring spring or fall season. We need flexibility with that. The girls being able to cross schools if they don't have a girls team kind of thing.
States can have different rules.
Yeah.
No, interesting way of putting it. What limitations have you reason to be there?
Or aren't encouraging the goals, good growth, and equity.
When is a good time for the limitations and when is a good time to not put the limitations?
Yeah, so you like flexibility. So it's like the end goal is to get more students.
Right.
So however that may be accomplished.
That needs to be state by state.
County by county.
We really didn't talk about, right, we didn't talk about emphasis on competitive versus emphasis on, I think it's hard to have competitive and I think if you don't have it, yeah, that's why we never really.
Sure, that feels.
And you don't have options.
Well, everybody has to, right, so I think it's part of but with limited resources, where do we want to put them? Right.
Sounds like we think growth leads to
Yeah.
Or getting up to I think it's where you got to put your resources in your coaching.
Well, and it seems to me that I see USAU putting resources to competitive. Can they allocate more resources to growth and equity?
So just to play devil's advocate, it's like when you get to watch Frisbee on Sports Center, you know, like what 12-year-old kid is like, holy shit, I want to do that, right?
Yeah, but I think
He's not 12. He was.
And then one thing I want to ask real quick, were there any points of divergence where you felt like there was disagreement? Someone brought up something and you were like, no, that I don't ever see that happening or whatever.
I mean, I think in Atlanta, I think we were I've been in the youth program probably more than all of you, but like, I don't know, 7th grade was like 3 years ago. Not really, but I think that I felt that there was stress around that topic, and I think AFDC and USAU do a really good job in tandem with each other, and I think that like kind of diagnosing Atlanta with all of these problems isn't necessarily realistic in terms of like offering to. It's like we have things, it's just about expanding. So I think that like I don't know, I sense that there's a little bit of tension around that just because it's not a first person
That's fine.
everything is city specific.
Similar to the breakout groups you just had, I'm just going to read some stuff related to the brand of USA Ultimate and then rely on you guys primarily to discuss, tile, take notes, and then we'll, at the end of the discussion, create a list of points of convergence and points of divergence to just settle on things that the group agreed on, disagreed on, so this is relatively long, so please bear with me. And this is just to sort of frame the discussion around the USA Ultimate brand. And by brand, we mean what do people think of when they hear the name USA Ultimate? Brands live in the hearts and minds of the people who come in contact with them, which is why we want your feedback. You guys are our core audience. USA Ultimate, in many ways, needs to improve its brand. We know that we aren't perfect, and we aren't trying to suggest that we only have a brand problem. Indeed, many of the other discussion topics tonight get at such issues facing the organization. Even so, despite great efforts, we'll never be perfect. No organization can be all things to all people. But many imperfect organizations out there have stronger brands than USA Ultimate. And we believe that USA Ultimate has a lot going for it to support a strong brand. We have hardworking staff and volunteers running popular programs across many divisions. We have the Girls Ultimate Movement, Youth Club Championships, Coach and Organizer Education, Learn to Play clinics, Play It Forward programs, etc. We also have governance structures which involve the community in our decision-making process. When people think about USA Ultimate, it's often not positive. Unfortunately, many of the great things USA Ultimate is doing do not currently translate to its brand. The organization stands for community, character, and competition, but those positive attributes don't always ring forth. This brand problem is an obstacle to the successful implementation of the strategic plan, which we're all working on tonight to help develop. Therefore, we very much hope for your guidance in trying to tackle this question. And the question to the group is then, going forward, what can the USA Ultimate brand represent, and how can we ensure that it does? So let me read the end question one more time, which is, going forward, what can the USA Ultimate brand represent, and how can we ensure that it does?
I'll jump in?
Yeah, please.
So, it comes off that earlier discussion we had, and I was starting to talk about with you, but getting it played in schools, PE programs, that was where I was starting to get excited about it, and that's not really a brand yet, but I think the curriculum, not just in the schools, but like in the colleges, the PE, the master's programs, as an academic sport and the spirit of the game. I mean, it's got an easy sell from an academic point of view in physical education. it could be the sport that ties up what teachers and administrators want to achieve, and use that spirit of the game as the lead aspect. The athleticism is clear when you see it, when you play it, but it has that's the unique branding of it. That resolution of conflict on the field, I think, is the lead, is the tip of the arrow that the world will be looking for and be aching for. You got to make it. It's got to be that. It's got to come through that.
So how would you articulate that? Is it just highlight spirit of the game as a differentiator?
I think spirit of the game is probably the differentiator, and it starts early in the physical, when children learn about sports. I mean, baseball, football, basketball, soccer, these things are just, they have brands. It's not the professional organizations, but those sports have long established brands. This sport has something that no other sport has that I can see, and it's that. And that, to find a way to articulate that and advance that, because then coaches, physical education programs, schools will want to bring this forward, I think.
So the question is like how to do that though, right? Like how to get that out into the curriculums and how to actually have it become a part of. There's definitely several PE teachers that are, in the Ultimate community here, and they teach it to their kids, but it's like super grassroots. Like, how does USAU do that? Like,
I think people who are in the universities who are taking master's level like physical education to go out and be physical education teachers at that level, at the highest level of academia in physical education, it comes down from there. I don't know how well
somebody else is setting those curricula, right? It's like how to get into those programs.
Yeah, I just think the academic institution would be interested in this idea first. I don't know that.
So you're saying have USAU basically like market more to that population
to how the education of sport.
To provide more funding to going towards that kind of
Well, sorry, as someone who works in academia, the way you do that is you get them to do research on it. So someone would have to go and do research on do a project on spirit of the game as part of their
thesis
in those fields.
And it's interesting you bring that up because I've seen through Facebook and things of that nature an influx in people saying, hey, I have a friend who's doing a master's thesis or a dissertation on something Ultimate related. If you're in the Ultimate community, fill out this survey. And so you become part of N, so that is, it's a great point, and I wasn't saying anything to refute you, mostly just to say that is starting to happen. But that happens not at the level that David is speaking to, which is how going to people who aren't already in Ultimate and saying, let's do research. It's happening from people coming from our own community already.
To me, in the initial question, that is one of the things that I heard was we have these two different parties, and obviously USAU faces a challenge in having to market to a lot of different parties and having to be different things to different people and how to find a unifying vision and all of that. But I think one of the biggest divides is between branding to its members and branding to potential members. And how do you find something that both ties that brand together but also differentiates how you have to message to those people differently? For example, I think spirit of the game, and I'm hyper engaged with Ultimate through work and stuff like that. I think spirit of the game is well represented to the membership. I think it's something that I associate as a USAU member, as an Ultimate player, as a media member, as a coach, all the different hats I wear with USAU Ultimate. I don't know if an external party such as a future athletic director or PE teacher has that association, or what their association is with USA Ultimate as a whole. They might see it just as oh, this is the same as USA Hockey or USA Lacrosse, while we as members and people who are engaged with Ultimate regularly have a different view of USAU and associations with it. So I think we have to figure out how do you brand those two separate entities, and how do we do that in a way that makes sense?
So I think a really easy way to brand both entities is to highlight inclusion. I think that's one thing that our sport offers more than most other sports is
you know, especially right now, we have this very large gender equity movement among our sport, right? That's from the member base that's trying to promote equity between its membership, but that's something that's very easy to brand and to show to the outside, you know, to the outside world, like, hey, this is something that people that are involved in the sport right now are very involved in, they're very, you know, supportive of, and it's not just, you know, you don't have to just focus on the gender equity aspect of it, you can just focus on the socioeconomic equity aspect too, which is something I take very seriously. I personally think that we need more minority diversity within the sport. And I think a great way to do that is, again, to highlight inclusion on the large scale, because that's something that you can easily sell to the membership, which they're already on board with, and more importantly, that's something you can very easily, like, you know, brand or market and sell to people outside the sport. Like, this is ultimate. Like, yes, you can highlight spirit of the game within that, but the main aspect is, if you play this sport, you're part of a community, you're part of something larger than just, you know, that the physical component of being on the field. You're part of a movement that is an inclusive community where everyone's viewpoint is looked at in an equal manner, where everyone is, you know, viewed equally across the plane.
So it
comes from the same ethos.
That's called intersectionality, by the way.
Yeah.
There's a word for that.
There you go, intersectionality. For the not as smart people.
You want me to write intersectionality?
Yeah, you should write that. It's basically exactly.
It comes from
But
the
also
same idea,
define
the
it
spirit of the game and the inclusion. It's all. It seems to me somehow that's coming from that same spirit. It's what I just.
So like we have that
it's
brand in
so
our heads.
untapped.
Like we as players have that branding in our heads, but outsiders, going to your point, how do we get that brand in the outsider world? Establish that brand for everyone.
I don't play. It's a new sport to me. I just discovered it the last couple of years because my son plays it. So I talk about it with people I know. I mean, what's that? Is this frisbee golf? You know, y'all probably heard that. And I just explain that one aspect, and that's the one time people go, oh, really? They do that? They work it out on the field? They don't have referees? And that always makes everybody's head snap up. You know, they see all the stuff. So it's for people that aren't familiar with the sport, it makes them sit up.
It seems to me like it would be easy if you're an outsider or if you'd been away from the game for a little while to think that USA Ultimate was only interested, only involved or managing the tournament series at the high level, elite levels. It seems to me like the brand could represent what is their approach towards elementary school, middle school, high school, college kids, what is their approach towards elite club players, masters players, community development, community outreach. It seems to me like you need a consistent message, or at least a stance on where you stand on all of those things. Like, for example, I don't know the relationship between, like he said, between the semi-pro league, whether there is one or not. I don't know. It seems like it could be a USA Ultimate thing or not. I don't know. And so part of that branding would be kind of like Apple. You know where Apple stands on desktops, laptops, mobile devices, and other stuff, right? iPods and everything else. You can define their brand from one little thing, so that it should be the same way.
Does that tie into like the programs like what Denise was talking about from their group? Would you say, like finding a way to like clearly structure out the programs that USAU has for like development at different levels of the sport, and then making that very accessible to people that are obviously within the sport, but then those that are interested in trying to find out more about the sport?
I think so.
So if you were to surmise that, would it be like branding not focused on competition, or equally focused on competition versus development?
I think it'd be more branding whatever your message is at all levels, at all opportunities. I don't know how to say that.
So I feel we're a little bit all over the map of what branding is. And so the beginning of everything you said was kind of more of like an apology for why the brand isn't as strong as you want it to be. And I don't feel like there's a brand issue with USA Ultimate. I feel pretty comfortable with what I think, they feel their role is and what they care about. And I think all the things we talked about, I associate those things with USA Ultimate. I think some of the stuff that was discussed in there was more about like communication or maybe the reputation within the Ultimate community. I feel like people who come in contact with USA Ultimate from outside of the community get all of the main points that we're trying to reach. I think spirit of the game is the #1 thing. I don't think that's something that need to emphasize more of. I think they do a pretty good job of that. So I think there's branding and then there's marketing. and then there's communication, there's execution of your marketing. So I don't know if those things are on the table as well, or if it's just the brand itself, because it's like, what is the role of USA Ultimate in the sport, right? They're the ones who do the rule set, right? They decide a lot of the competition stuff, a lot of policies and stuff. So I think if there are people who have a poor association with USA Ultimate, I don't know that it's because of any of the things we talked about here. I think it might be some other quibble of something else.
So then if I framed it a little bit differently based on sort of your comments, how would you strengthen the USA Ultimate brand within the community to make people, make members, participants, players, whatnot, feel more proud to be a member of the organization versus something they are required to become to participate?
Just to jump in, so as opposed to the brand of Ultimate itself, we're just talking about USA Ultimate within Ultimate.
Brand of the organization, not the sport.
So I think a challenge there, right, is that what a lot of what USA has to do is like organization and governance, and that's not super sexy, right? It's not something people get super excited about. But I think the big thing that, to me at least, USAU does is create opportunities for people to play in an exciting environment, and I think they can do more to highlight their involvement in that. Because when I think of the events that I've competed in or that I coach in, I don't necessarily think of USAU when I think of those events. And I think USAU, if there's a way to create a stronger association with those events, which is where a lot of people create their experience in Ultimate, I think that might enhance the positivity with the brand. So whether that means having more visual USAU presence at regionals, at sectionals, at nationals is obviously great, or whether that's at other events, or other ways that USAU is connected to the actual competition events and opportunities to play, I think that might get people's minds thinking more about the things that USAU gives them rather than the restrictions USAU places on them, or things that USAU takes away from them.
That's a great point. I think too many people get what USAU doesn't have as opposed to what USAU does.
Are there other organizations that have they did it right, they've got a good reputation in their sport?
Can I answer his question?
Oh.
So I think it's an alignment issue. So I think if I were to use the example of Comcast, right? I feel like Comcast doesn't care about what I have to say. Comcast doesn't build into their processes or my interactions with them the things that I care about, right? So I think if that's an issue, those are the things you fix, and then people are like, oh yeah, I had a good experience, I like this brand. Or if they speak on our behalf and I agree with what they said, I say yes. I forge that in. We're you were talking about governance is sexy. Well, if someone is politically inspiring people, it's generally because they're yes, I believe everything that person's saying. They're doing a better job of saying it than me. And if they're saying things that are different on my behalf, I get very sensitive to that. So I think that alignment with how people feel and speaking for them is important.
Yeah, I think to follow up on that, I think more often than not, players actually complain a lot about the events because they don't like where it's being held, or they don't understand why it's in a certain place, or there are a lot of things that they don't really understand how we got to here, where events are very expensive, and these things that sort of are not necessarily, there's enough visibility. USAU is hosting these events, and a lot of players are unhappy about a lot of the components of it. And I don't know how that really gets fixed necessarily. And
a suggestion for how to fix that is USA Ultimate takes the first offer that's offered most of the time when it comes to some of the lower down things, like sectionals. I'm going to disagree with you, and which is okay, which is why we're here. But the reason I think that is USA Ultimate doesn't seek a second bid. What I think they need to be doing is we have a first bid, actively go seeking a second. I had to go look to try to host a sectional, as opposed to I feel that USA Ultimate could do a better job.
You can send in a bid at any time.
You could, but once one bid is.
Sectional coordinator and a regional coordinator, which I am.
So would you say the issue is not as much that USAU doesn't do it, or USAU does not maybe promote or make that resource as available. Because I can say from some level of personal experience that it's not the fact that the first bid is taken, it's that the only bid is taken.
Yeah.
Which is a very big difference.
Well, so again, bring it back to the question at hand, which was how do they do a better job of it? I think it's knowing your user base better, right? So market research like this vision tour is if you're doing it every 3 to 5 years, you're touching your constituents and getting to know what they have to say about things. That's not often enough, you know, if there's an issue. And if you are doing it regularly and you know how people feel about things, I know there's a lot of surveys. Maybe surveys aren't, you know, the only answer, and there needs to be more things to do.
So would you just say
getting to know your
more
base
more
better.
getting okay
I mean, you talk about like a presence. I think like a physical, you're like alluding to like a physical presence in the community.
So
right?
small gripe here. I'm the president of the AFDC, right? I've been that for over 5 years now. I've never once spoken to anyone at USA Ultimate. I've never had an email with anybody outside of a social setting at USA Ultimate. So how are they supposed to know what we're doing, you know, or how I feel about things, or if I'm representing other people?
One of my issues with just the way that we think about branding, you know, we try to, you know, portray.
Can I finish actually what I was saying?
Yeah. Sure.
Just because, like, so an example of like things that have happened in the past, where like I've reached out to host a bid before, and we were told, oh, we've got a bid, we're fine. And what I would prefer to see happen would be like if a bid comes in, email the people, like the stakeholders of that geographic area who are like the club captains or whatever, and be like, hey, we have one bid, and without specifically saying it, the bid does XYZ. If we would love if anyone else would send out another bid by this deadline, and then we'll decide. Like, seek a second option before deciding, and not to like shit on you, because like I know sometimes that doesn't happen, but there's been times in my experience that the other option wasn't taken, yeah, or sought.
Yeah, I think that's tough in a sense. Like, there are a lot of volunteers that do that stuff, right? They get a minimal amount of payment, I think, from USAU, and that's, you know, like, there's not a lot of glory in being a sectional coordinator, and I think that's I mean, that's maybe USAU can incentivize more for coordinators and to, you know, publicize these deadlines more. I think that's a good tangible. Like,
does that tie
also,
into branding?
No, I don't know. I think it ties into like executing like accessibility.
In a way it could, because essentially when you're acting as a coordinator, whether it's sectional coordinator, regional coordinator, national director, you're acting as a representative of the organization. So yeah, those people are out there as the face of our organization.
Oh, so if they're making somebody unhappy, that hurts the brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Bro, you had a point you were...
Yeah, so it was a little bit, it was kind of tangentially related to this, but my concern is that USAU's branding it's kind of scattered. You know, USAU is focused on so many different things with limited resources, admittedly, that it seems like USAU is stretching itself beyond where it really has the ability to make an impact at, you know, whether that's, you know, Girls Ultimate Movement or local organizations. And so I think the better answer, and which we've started to see with some of the state organizations, is to start empowering people with the limited resources that USA Ultimate has at its disposal, and leverage those local decision makers to be able to, you know, act on what's important to the people in that community or the constituents of those particular movements, rather than USAU trying to govern to that level, to that degree. You know, I think it's just it's kind of a fool's errand.
Would you say that's a characteristic of their brand, is that they're overly controlling?
I wouldn't say controlling, just overreaching beyond what they have the ability to reasonably manage. I mean, as a point of clarity, that's exactly what we're doing right now with the state organization and local association, the development. I mean, that's, if you look at, someone asked a question earlier about, I think you did, about are there other organizations out there, other national governing bodies that do have a strong brand, that are well perceived by their members in their community? And there's not many. I mean, this is not unique to USA Ultimate or the sport of Ultimate. I mean, this is something virtually every national governing body the sport deals with. I've worked for several of them prior to USA Ultimate, so I'm very familiar with the challenges around other sports. But the ones that are successful which are a handful: swimming, volleyball, ski, and snowboard. They're structured in a way like you were just describing, which is the state organization level. We don't have the capacity to administer and govern the sport at the local and regional level as a full-time staff of 16 people in Colorado Springs. That's why we need communities like the organizations and communities like Atlanta and the AFDC and other state organizations to sort of act as extensions of the national organization and deliver our message and our programs and our branding and all that sort of stuff locally and regionally.
It's not only, I think, from a geographical sense, though. I think it's also from just the way that USAU divides its, I guess, the categories that it supports. Whether that's the elite clubs, elite club, masters, college, youth. I mean, from that sense, I think there's just too many things that they're trying to do without necessarily having the ability to do so, but not necessarily empowering people to work on that level, whether that's locally or nationally.
So how can we capture that in a sentence?
So
it's great.
Yeah, I'm not honestly positive. I'll give it a little bit more thought, but I would say, from a youth standpoint, trying to work with other national youth organizations.
You're talking about delegating
empowerment a couple of times.
Delegate and manage instead of do.
Right, exactly. But finding like the right people or organizations to work with that can help with that.
Well,
that already have resources or reach in place.
Like John said, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Never once heard from a representative of USAU on like a formal basis, right?
I know that the juniors communicates more, but at the adult level.
Yeah, the juniors as an affiliate of ours, the communication is probably a little bit more regular between those departments.
But like you have a massive organization, right, that has really strong ties in the community right now, AFDC, and it's not being tapped, and you're not reaching the member base. You essentially have like an opportunity to double dip in a membership that you already have by being USAU members and then are also members of AFDC. And so why not, that's how you properly spread your brand and properly market yourself, right? Is take advantage of every opportunity that you can showcase what you need to showcase.
Somebody else do for you.
Yeah, exactly. So not just what you're doing at major events and what you're already doing at the USAU level, but then partnering with organizations like AFDC and then JLU, for example, like Jacksonville Ultimate League, or was it Bay Area Disc Association, like any of those other organizations that maybe don't have a formal relationship with USAU as a governing body. Get on that, essentially. Find a way that way you can actually properly market your brand, which I think we've come to the conclusion is fine.
They did start that.
We do, yeah. We do at the US Open. We have an annual organized. Well, prior to the US Open, we had one that was every 2 years.
So you all have 16 full-time staff?
Yeah.
Do you have other staff beyond that?
No.
So I think the AFDC is bigger than USA Ultimate. And we're all
There's a lot of
volunteers.
organizations that are bigger than
Yeah, it's crazy that you have to think about, right? And like Disc Northwest or the Bay Area Disc Association, you combine all of those people, it's a much bigger army you have to wield if you were to align them all.
How does that compare to other sports like the rugby and the lacrosse?
I mean, it varies. I mean, to give you an example, lacrosse I'm familiar with, rugby, swimming is another good one. So we share a building with USA Triathlon. They're on the second floor, one on the third floor. They have 78 staff. Prior to USA Ultimate, I was at USA Cycling with the Olympic Committee for several years. When I left there, they had 60 plus staff. We're sort of in the middle. I mean, relative to other NG, there's national governing bodies that have 3 or 4 full-time staff.
And WIFT is even smaller, right?
WIFT is 1.
Yeah.
So the fact that our international federation only has 1 full-time employee is a challenge as well. So I think it's good to sometimes put Ultimate in that perspective as well. Someone mentioned limited resources. I think we did.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of people are, and to be, in my opinion, increasing the involvement with the state-based organizations or increasing the development of that program, which is what USAU is going for right now, gets at already the two points that are up there, plus the third that's kind of on its way. So maybe since we're talking about branding and marketing and communication, creating a more obvious sense that, hey, this is something we are doing now to try and accomplish these goals. Here's why we're doing it. You know, when Angela says that there's issues with the quality of events or dissatisfaction with events, in my opinion, a lot of that comes from people only look at, well, why is this event bad for me, and not how does this event work for other people. So as a microcosm of the bigger picture, communicating why an event's site and date and format and all those kinds of things are chosen and how that affects the parties within, communication can help get away from a lot of the problems of why aren't they serving me, and more into how are they serving everyone, me included, and what does that mean for my own give and take. Does that make sense? Am I saying that in a way that makes sense? Because it sounds like USA's on the right path with what a lot of us are saying they should be doing. Just where there's a methodology and communications issue there.
So communication was a key word. Yeah, so your point was kind of an amalgam of like a number of different ones. So
communicate.
And I want to make sure that we get the other ones too.
Communicate large decisions with effectiveness and transparency.
Yeah, transparency.
Large decisions with transparency.
Yeah, it's just improved communication, right? Transparency is improved.
Is a form of improved communication.
All right, so improved communication as means of transparency.
Right, and it's a two-way street. You understand what people want, and then you communicate why you made a decision to them. And when you have that alignment, people are happy generally. And when they feel like they're heard, they feel like you're representing them better.
Just to point out, I think this is a good example of that, of this whole.
Yes, absolutely. You should do them every year.
But so I think the follow-up to this would be effectively communicating the feedback that they get from this vision tour, and then how that's influencing the next decisions, rather than saying, okay, so we got this information and here's what we decided. I think people want to see more of, okay, what did you hear from what we said? And then how did you take that and apply that? And I think some of that happens behind closed doors in governance. Right, board of directors, a lot of the votes are not public right now. Is that factual? So it's hard to see how people are representing the feedback that we get here in actual policy making. So that kind of stuff I think can be used to communicate. This is like a great first step of like, what's the next step? How is this being used to effectively create an environment that we want to be a part of and strengthen the brand and our associations with USA Ultimate?
Well, board of directors, those positions are voted on.
Not all of them. Some are.
Some are appointed.
Some are appointed. Some are elected. So to follow up what Keith said, everyone here is going to have a shared experience of this event, and they'll have that memory. But what if this event is totally different than every other stop on the Vision Tour? And when the governors sit down and they think about it, they take that and they weight that and they say, well, the majority of people felt this way, but Atlanta was different. And then we don't get communicated that, and then all of a sudden everything that comes out is totally, there's dissonance from what we talked about. Then we would feel angry, right? Like, so there needs to be communication why a decision was made and how we fit into that pipeline.
I feel like if you communicate this to you, President of the AFDC, then word of mouth, it'll get around. Not everyone goes on USA.com and reads the latest postings. Word of mouth can be a lot more effective to follow up if you would do that some way.
Trying to encapsulate what I was saying. I was going to say, like, empower not only on the geographic or local level, but also on the initiative outreach level.
But also on the what?
Initiative outreach level, like empower by initiative or
I mean, there's a lot of discussion around it. It basically boils down to
using
geographic. Yeah. I mean, there's no point in trying to develop internally how we get to gender equity. If we look at like other sports and organizations, how if they do it better, what do they do to get to that point? So like, why aren't we going to USA?
So you're saying finding out what geographic also on the finish line.
I mean, it's a great idea. Why is it?
Okay, folks, here's what the semi-pro group thought. What we're going to do is quickly, like just a minute each, because we're literally about to get kicked out, just go through the highlights of this in 1 minute. And then we'll do that at all 4 of these, and then I got to get a collective reaction from you. What does all this mean?
All right, well, yeah, it's a really good discussion. The first point is that we do not believe that the USA should ignore the ADL. We think that statement should be, they have a statement about their,
feeling about the ADL, and that should be widespread. We think that they need to intervene quickly because the changes that are happening to our sport are happening very quickly. We think that there should be some gender mixed type groups. Can someone speak to that point? I don't know.
Like there have been cascades.
Oh, alternative structures for games.
So looking at
in the ADL, yeah.
Yeah. And we think that, which one is good? Go for it. Speak up.
One thing we talked about was like, we're drawing this like weird distinction between like referees and observers, and like, why are we drawing this distinction, and do the players actually want that?
And the last point that I'll say is that we talked about, do people and players care about who wins USAU, ADL, and do we care about giving power to our players and having our players stand up for what we do or do not believe?
Yeah, thank you. Okay, I'm going to push youth next in case we get kicked out of here, that we have to cover this. Sorry, but whoever's on the youth group that wants to talk.
So we had a lot of really good discussion, and a lot of it was trying to figure out where we should direct resources and where we should take away some barriers. So one big one, reducing barriers to playing. So either for some players, reducing dues, especially for girls players, reducing barriers for events like YCC or even high school states. We also wanted to create more local playing opportunities for people to make it more accessible on all fronts. We talked about resources for coaches, trying to make incentives potentially to work with new or growing teams at smaller schools that don't have a ton of resources already, and anything we can do to develop more coaches, obviously. And then we also talked about resources for combo teams as a means of growth. So there are tons of high schools that have a few players apiece, create combo teams, and it's a great way for them to go back and actually start schools with their own, or teams with their own schools. We talked about how we can maybe grow in youth region, which is a lot of times through youth, but also potentially through local youth groups like rec centers and things like that. And then we talked about working with high school athletic associations to generate some recognition, because it's a big challenge for a lot of youth teams is access to fields or access to trainers in schools or funding for uniforms or whatever, and getting some recognition from high school athletic associations will alleviate that a lot. And making it easier to sign up. Goes a little bit with trying to reduce dues, but also making it an easier process on the website. I think that was huge.
Great, thank you. Is there somebody to speak to this motion? It's a really beautiful thing.
I know. It's not yeah, so we split up into two groups talking about youth on the stage, which was awesome. I'm so excited about that. But I noticed a lot of parallels with what Stacy was just talking about, especially the idea of limitations, reevaluating when there are limitations or when there is the ability to have some flexibility. Prioritizing growth, which will lead to competition down the line, but prioritizing growth and development first. And so kind of along that vein, resources are put into growth. If you've got limited resources, you're prioritizing growth coaching, and then competition follows as a natural flow. And then of course, this was huge too, this idea of parents in their community or in their school looking for resources about best practices of how to get into that. Once I have a conversation with the athletic director, how does it go? What do we talk about? What are my selling points, so to speak? And so some ideas of what's worked at other places, and some just thoughts, and maybe even someone dedicated to bounce ideas off at HQ at the national level. And if I missed anything, someone in my group? No? Okay, cool. Thank you. No, those are both the youth ones.
Okay, great. So, Tom.
Yeah, this can be super quick. It was mostly Q&A and interesting discussion. I think if there was a consensus, being in the Olympic family is good, given all the networks that we can build with all those youth serving organizations and other organizations. We can spread our values to other sports, and they can learn from us by being in it. Being on the Olympic program, good thing, bad thing, maybe a good thing, maybe not. Definitely not if we have to compromise any of our values.
Great, thanks. And the game and branding, or branding?
Yeah, so
No. Given I probably have 30 seconds left, I guess it's just hit some of the big points. For part of our prompt for branding was the acknowledgement that USAU has a bit of a branding issue currently with its membership, and so we were focusing on kind of that aspect of it. And so one of the big things, just again hitting on the high points, is branding towards membership versus non-community members. So how are we going to grow the sport of Ultimate for people who are already a member of the Ultimate community, while still holding true, kind of like Tom was saying, with being a part of the Olympics, not compromising our own values by doing so. There's a lot more discussion to it than that. Recognizing as a brand, not just focusing on the fact that we offer high-level, high-profile events such as college club nationals, things of that nature, but focusing on all the different initiatives that we do, in fact, have. One interesting point was more USAU branding at other events like sectionals, regionals, youth events, traditional tournaments, not necessarily part of the competitive structure. Getting to know our base better was a really interesting point brought up by members of AFDC in our group, was having USA Ultimate reaching out to these local disc organizations to get the pulse of what's happening within the community, not just on a semi-frequent basis every few years doing a vision tour like this, but on a more regular basis. Having a member of USA Ultimate reaching out, finding out what the challenges are facing that particular organization, what's going on in their community. So that way, instead of doing it, coming to Atlanta to figure it out, there's a dialogue that's going on a fairly regular basis. And then really better training our volunteers who are acting as representatives at USA Ultimate, and then improved communications as a means of transparency. A big part of that branding will be, this is what we're doing and this is why we're doing it. And part of what we discuss is doing it here. So if you want to see more notes on this, I'm sure someone will write it up and send it to you from USAU.
Can we get the agenda, post-it notes up and put them down here?
Oh, I'm sorry, I pulled them down.
It's all right, if we can just put them up while we're talking. So this, folks, this is all the stuff. This is all the stuff we got. You want to leave all of them? What stands out? What's like? What does all this mean? Is there a theme?
I think one theme is that I know I'm doing a good job now, but there's really needing to pump the blood into however and whenever we can get people started in schools, public schools, private schools, but elementary schools, middle schools. I feel like a lot of things that are on every single one happens at schools. So that was one of the themes.
I think something I've thought for a long time is USA Ultimate doesn't have governance problems, they do a pretty good job, but they have communications problems. And the fact that Hannah, who's super plugged in, didn't know that this statement about the AUDL didn't exist, that's a problem. So figuring that part out will go a long way to maybe fixing some of the ill will that some of the players currently have towards headquarters as this weird entity.
It is a great example.
I think a big overlying message is that what makes Ultimate so special are these amazing values that we have, and we can never compromise those values for growth or any other aspect or any other adventure moving forward.
And the inaction is not going to preserve those values.
Yeah.
Inaction, anybody in this room?
Will not preserve that. Well, you all tired or something? I mean, anybody got anything to say?
I think USAU needs to take a leadership role in providing the description of how to reach out into communities.
communities, kind of like what you're doing now, and it shouldn't be prescriptive. It should be descriptive of what is successful, almost case studies, so that then they can take it to the appropriate body, whether it be an elementary school, whether it be a local nonprofit, whether it be the local ultimate organization, on how to get plugged in and maintain the beliefs and the sentiment of what makes the sport special, while also promoting it and making it pervasive in the community.
Yeah.
So I think one of the things I took away from this conversation, and this in part goes to something Stu Downs said in our equity breakdown group, is USAU is 16 people and a bunch of volunteers. We can give them a lot of suggestions, but they're not going to be able to do it all. And so people in the room have to take it upon themselves to take action. And a lot of us are doing that, and that's great to see. And I think USAU is doing a good job in taking some of this feedback, and they have to figure out how to support those people in taking that action. But some of that's going to be sacrifices on our part in order to make some of this stuff happen. So, when I coach a college women's team, and I have 3 coaches, and we're in the city, and we're a well-established program. And I would hate to lose one of my coaches, and I would hate to have to leave my team. But one of us might have to sit down and make that decision in order to coach a team that might need that person more. And that's the kind of sacrifice that I personally don't want to make, but we're going to have to make those kind of choices if we want to improve things. And we can't just provide the suggestions and then tell USAU to go do it and not be willing to get our hands dirty. So I think that's something all of us can take away from this, and USAU has to be able to figure out how to not only hear those people's ideas, but then be able to support them in doing those things and incentivizing people to make those sacrifices, whether it's volunteering their time at a high school or at an underprivileged community, or making a sacrifice in the preference of where they're coaching and coaching somewhere else. So hopefully we can find ways as a community to do that and work with USAU to accomplish those goals.
That would be it, because it is precisely our problem. You see all the programs we already have, and there's 16 people that run all that stuff, and then we always have new ideas about all these new things we ought to be doing. And then there's also nationals. How many championship series do we run now?
Too many?
Something like 20, because if you go through every division on every series, it's just crazy. And so we have a problem of trying to get everything done, which is why it is completely dependent on the players like you all that actually bother to get out here and worry about and work on this sport. Anybody else? Yes. No, please.
Last thing, promise. I think as a governing body, I know part of your purpose is to kind of make the rules, but I would either be more transparent in how you're making those rules and the why and how you come to those decisions, and also potentially be more flexible if growth and equity are the goals.
Gotcha. I've heard that one. Maybe something we're not that good at. So there's one last thing, unless somebody has something else to say, which is on your way out, you're going to get 5 dots. In fact, Julia's going to get the dots now. You've got all these issues, all these things that we're thinking about and working on. What ones are the most important? What ones should we be focused on? Take your dots and put them on the issues that you think are the big issues. On your way out, there's a comment card. If you have any ideas on how this could be run better, any just ideas about making this work better, that would be appreciated. How much time given to what, if, think about those type of things. It would be great to hear any feedback you've got. And there's a scorecard, 1 to 10. Did we listen to you or not? Please give us a score. And with that, you're excused.
Can you believe it?